Chapter 622. Before the throne, Jingxian disappeared. Specks of starlight merged into the world, and the soul returned to the three ancient times. Sadness flashed in Shi Wangmu's eyes. The era that belonged to them was finally over. Inside the ethereal immortal palace, the many primes and above looked at the woman before them. Their hearts churned, and they did not even dare to breathe loudly. Shi Wangmu shifted her gaze to the people before her, and her eyes regained their calm. Everyone subconsciously retreated, but they discovered that they could not move at all. They immediately felt horrified. Anger appeared on Purple Marquis' face. He was not willing to be restrained, so he forcefully struggled free. Sword intent gathered around him, and he swung his sword at the immortal master's soul before him. When the sword chi arrived, Shi Wangmu did not move. Wind and clouds churned around her, and the boundless sword chi scattered for no reason, unable to get close to her. Immeasurable strength, surpassing common sense. The master of the immortal world, who suppressed the three ancient times, showed her shocking ability. With one step, the sky collapsed and the ground sank. The entire immortal world shook violently. The broken immortal world could not endure this abnormal and horrifying might. The ground cracked, on the verge of collapse. With the immortal might, Purple Marquis was sent flying. After he landed, he took more than 10 steps back. His body was covered in blood, looking extremely sorry. Ha! Purple Marquis roared and circulated his extreme essence energy again. Sword light coiled around him, condensing into one. The vigorous and tyrannical sword light crossed 300 meters, heaven-defying and cutting down immortals. Bang! Shi Wangmu's expression did not change. She only took one step, and the vast immortal might shattered the sword light. The ground of the immortal world shook and sank. More than half of it collapsed. Blood splattered everywhere. Purple Marquis' body was dyed red, and the martial bones in his arms were shattered. You may leave. Shi Wangmu said softly. Then, she waved her hand and knocked Xiao Chen out of the hall. The unshakable master of the immortal world shocked everyone. It turned out that there really were immortals in the world. It turned out that immortals were so shockingly strong. Shi Wangmu looked at the familiar hall before her and sighed softly. Then, she took another step and vanished. The instant Shi Wangmu left, the entire ethereal immortal palace in the air quickly collapsed. Many halls collapsed and fell from the sky. The scene of the end of the world shook everyone's hearts. Buzz! The immortal palace collapsed. In the depths of the immortal palace, the sound of a sword rang out. As the heavens shook and the earth shook, an ancient sword descended. The immortal sword appeared. Cloud light flowed, and the 9 heavens trembled. The supreme treasure of the immortal world that had shaken 3 ancient times appeared in the world of mortals. The sword was neither made of gold nor jade. It was as if it was cast from stone. Cracks were densely packed all over it. At the very center, there was a clear crack that crisscrossed the entire sword. It seemed as if it would collapse at any moment. However, even though the immortal sword was broken, its power was still terrifying enough to make one's heart palpitate. All the Supreme Being experts present felt a terrifying sword pressure pressing down on them, causing the true chi in their bodies to tremble violently. Seize the sword! Princess Hong Wuan came back to her senses and shouted. She flew towards the immortal sword. Not far away, the phoenix-bodied woman in red narrowed her eyes. She moved her feet and flew over as well. On the other side, the white-clothed woman, Ling Luozhen, Qi Huan, and the others also leaped forward to seize the sword. Dozens of streaks of light leapt into the sky, and every single one of them was at least at the consummate level. The supreme experts of the entire Red Luan starfield acted together to seize the immortal sword. However, there was only one exception. In the distance, a black-clothed figure flashed past rapidly. He ignored the appearance of the immortal sword and chased after the Queen Mother of the West. 1,000 miles away, amidst the multicolored light, the world trembled with every step the peerlessly beautiful woman took. Her waist-length hair fluttered in the wind. Her indescribable elegance made even the sun and moon lose their color. In a short while, the Queen Mother of the West had traversed more than half of the immortal world. As she looked at the world that was gradually collapsing, the sadness in her eyes became more and more intense. Behind her, a black-clothed figure flashed past quickly and chased after her. The Queen Mother of the West did not mind. She continued to traverse the immortal world. Every step she took covered 1,000 miles. She surpassed the limits of the void. Nothing could touch her. The great Tao wailed and fell continuously. The more the demonic body chased after her, the more tired it became. However, it refused to stop and chased after her with all its might. After traveling for tens of thousands of miles, she reached the end of the immortal world. The Queen Mother of the West stopped and looked at the swirling black vortex at the end of the immortal world. Her eyes flashed with brilliance. The black vortex was eerily silent. She could not sense any signs of life. An oppressive and heavy aura spread out. The surrounding world was constantly being corroded. The degree of collapse was especially severe. After observing for a long time, the Queen Mother of the West took off the hairpin on her head and waved her hand. In an instant, a golden light illuminated the 9 heavens. Thousands of starlight broke through the sky and turned into an invisible heavenly river. Amid rumbling sounds, the world where the black vortex was collapsed and sank into the heavenly river. After doing what she had to do, the Queen Mother of the West sighed softly. Her remaining strength was exhausted, and her soul gradually faded away. At this moment, the black-clothed figure rushed over. Looking at the beautiful figure that was about to disappear, he asked anxiously, "Immortal Master, is there a way to revive the dead in this world?" The Queen Mother of the West turned around. When she saw the person who came, a strange expression flashed across her beautiful face. Then, she nodded gently and said, "Yes." "Where do you want to find it?" Ning Chen asked anxiously. However, this time, there was no reply. The Queen Mother of the West's soul turned into starlight and disappeared from the world. The golden hairpin fell, and its light dimmed a lot. Seeing that it was about to fall into the heavenly river, Ning Chen rushed over and caught the golden hairpin in time. The aura of the golden hairpin with the dragon and phoenix was many times weaker than before. It was obvious that drawing the heavenly river in front of them had exhausted most of the golden hairpin's power. Ning Chen. Seeing the golden hairpin, tugged at his clothes. Her big eyes were full of anticipation. She said softly, "Give it to me." "Okay." Ning Chen nodded slightly and did not refuse. He gathered his essence and sealed the aura on the surface of the golden hairpin. Then, he handed it to the little girl in front of him. Happily took the golden hairpin and inserted it into her hair. Her small face was full of smiles. "Does it look good?" "Yes." Ning Chen nodded. He looked at the distant horizon and said softly, "Let's go. The immortal sword has appeared. We have to go back as soon as possible." "Okay," replied softly. As soon as he finished speaking, the two of them rushed out quickly. They turned into flowing light and flew towards the place where the immortal sword had appeared. At the same time, tens of thousands of miles away, in the sky above the ruins of the immortal palace, the immortal sword floated up and down. Majestic sword intent swept out in all directions. Suddenly, all the approaching figures were sent flying. Below, the linen-clothed man who was watching the battle moved. He rushed to the front of the immortal sword and reached out to grab the sword hilt. The immortal sword sensed it. Sword mist surged and blocked the former's hand. "Ha!" With a deep shout, the linen-clothed man's cultivation increased by a few degrees. He forcefully broke through the obstruction of the sword mist and grabbed the sword hilt. After a short moment of silence, the immortal sword shook violently. A murderous aura spread out and instantly destroyed the former's life force. "Ah!" The linen-clothed man flew out and crashed onto the ground. His blood stained the red dust. Grandpa! The little boy went forward and shouted anxiously. You won't blame Grandpa, right? As he spoke, the linen-clothed man struggled to get up. He raised his hand and pressed it on the little boy's head. A terrifying suction force burst out and instantly swallowed the latter's life force. With a look of disbelief, the little boy's figure quickly disappeared. He opened his mouth, but it was too late to ask. In the next moment, the injuries on the linen-clothed man's body healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. His aura was even stronger than before. The cruel scene shocked everyone present. Beside Princess Hong Wuan, the phoenix body's eyes were filled with a strong murderous aura. Her figure flashed and the tip of her sword came for the life of the man. The linen-clothed man turned his palm to block the sword. With a clang, the aftershock spread out in all directions. Princess Hong Wuan rushed forward and waved her hand to shake off the battle. She coldly glanced at Gue Nu and said, "Snatching the sword is more important. We'll deal with this person later." The phoenix body withdrew her sword and suppressed the murderous aura in her eyes. She did not say a word from the beginning to the end. Boundless heaven and earth accept orders, 10 directions seal. At this moment, 5 beautiful figures leaped into the sky. The white-clothed woman was the leader. She flipped her hand seals and layers of brilliance sealed the immortal sword. The hand seals were formed and the restriction appeared. The wind and clouds turned into a heavenly net. The immortal sword's aura was restrained for a moment. The white-clothed woman rushed forward and tried to grab the immortal sword again. Seeing that the immortal sword was about to fall into someone else's hands, the 5 disciples of Mahist sect moved together. Ling Luozhen, Qi Huan, and the third peak master, 3 ascending immortal experts, rushed forward and blocked the white-clothed woman together. The battle between the immortal sword and the immortal sword was instantly heated. Every move of the ascending immortal experts was earth-shattering. While the battle was in a deadlock, the wind and clouds in the sky suddenly changed. A 7-colored hand descended and grabbed the immortal sword. "Master!" The 5 disciples of Mahist sect were shocked and said at the same time. "Old man, I knew you would use this move." At the same time, an extremely domineering sword Qi soared into the sky and collided with the hand. "Purple Marquis, long time no see." A white-clothed figure appeared in the 7-colored light. He looked at the figure below and said calmly. "It's only been 100 years. It's not that long." As soon as he finished speaking, Purple Marquis appeared. He stepped into the air and spoke coldly. "I haven't seen you in 100 years, but your temperament is still so irritable." "I've already advised you against it," said Mo Zhu calmly. "I haven't seen you in 100 years, but your hypocrisy makes me feel even more disgusted." "Old man, you think you can stop me with just a mere incarnation?" sneered Purple Marquis. "You'll know once you try," said Mo Zhu indifferently. "Oh. So my old friends have all arrived." The 2 of them had just appeared when the wind and clouds in the sky stirred once more. A purple-clothed figure walked out. He looked to be in his 30s, but his hair was already white. His powerful aura shocked everyone. "Realm Monarch Hong Wuan." Mo Zhu narrowed his eyes and slowly said. "Another old monster," snorted Purple Marquis. "Master." Princess Hong Wuan respectfully bowed. "The 2 of you retreat to the side," said the Realm Monarch Hong Wuan softly. "Yes." Princess Hong Wuan took her phoenix body and withdrew from the battle. "Ling Yun, the rest of you retreat as well," said Mo Zhu. "Yes." The 5 disciples of Mo Gate accepted the order and retreated at the same time. The 3 immortal corporeal realm experts faced each other. Their auras stagnated for a moment, and the entire space started to distort. Just as the 3 of them were about to fight, a young man in a luxurious azure robe walked over from the desolate land of deities. He had a handsome face, and each of his steps was steady. No one could sense the aura of a cultivator. There was a sword rack behind the man's back. The three swords on the rack hummed at the same time. Green and red intersected, fighting in Zhongzhou and entering the demonic wheel. After so many years, the legend of the Grand Xia had reappeared. Chapter 623. Above the celestial world, Mo Zhu, realm monarch Red Luan, and Purple Marquis stood in the void. The three strongest experts of the current era were fighting for the celestial sword. Purple Marquis waved his hand, and rays of sword light lined up in front of him. A tyrannical aura spread out, and space collapsed one after another. Unable to withstand the might of the sword, it collapsed rapidly. When the sword light came out, the sky trembled. Everywhere it passed, space turned into nothingness. Huge black gullies emitted endless coldness. When the sword intent approached, Mo Zhu and realm monarch Red Luan blocked it with their palms. Seven-colored brilliance and red mist rose respectively, blocking the first wave of sword intent. As the sword fell, Purple Marquis gathered elemental energy with his fingers. The wind and lightning in the surrounding thousand li gathered into a sword, intertwining and slashing towards the two. Realm monarch Red Luan stepped forward. Her elemental energy rose, and red mist filled the sky. It condensed into a form, and a red ribbon coiled around her body, blocking the sword intent once again. Not far away, Mo Zhu also used his seven-colored secret technique. Multicolored light fluctuated, and nothing could get close to him. After the initial probing, the three of them who were on guard against each other moved again. In an instant, the wind and clouds changed. With a loud bang, the sky collapsed and the earth fell. The three of them used their full strength, and the palm and sword collided. A shocking power erupted, and the mountains within thousand li were destroyed, turning into a desolation. Celestial technique, shocking rainbow. Mo Zhu raised his hand, and the celestial technique appeared. Seven-colored light spread out, and the seven-colored brilliance traversed across the sky. The sky was clear for thousands of li, and the seven rainbows shocked the sun. Seeing that the incoming attack was extraordinary, realm monarch Red Luan waved her hand, and the red ribbon around her body moved to block the seven-colored celestial technique. At the same time, Purple Marquis also used his sword power, and it was unparalleled, blocking the celestial technique head-on. When the three attacks collided, the sky and the earth surged, and the aftermath surged. The three of them retreated a few steps at the same time, and the aura around them shook violently. One attacking and one defending, the three of them attacked and defended each other. The three of them who used their full strength exchanged blows, and the majestic aura rolled, and the power became more and more shocking. Below the battle, the collapsed celestial palace was destroyed by the three's attacks. Huge pieces fell and crashed onto the ground, gradually raising a cloud of dust. Sky Dragon Shock. Above the immortal palace, the battle became more and more intense. The realm master of the Red Luan realm flipped her palm to receive the essence energy. The red mist transformed into a heavenly dragon, and with a palm strike that shook the heavens and earth, it pressed towards Mo Zhu who was close to her. Upon seeing this, Purple Marquis changed his sword stance. A tyrannical and sharp sword slashed towards the Ink Planet Master. Mo Zhu calmed himself down. His left hand channeled the seven-colored immortal art while his right hand condensed the Great Yin and Great Yang immortal arts. An incomparably tyrannical force met the two of them head-on. Mo Zhu was forced to take half a step back. Fighting one against two, he was at a slight disadvantage. Let's join forces and destroy this incarnation of his. We'll fight for the immortal sword again. Purple Marquis glanced at the Red Luan region queen. Sure. The Red Phoenix realm monarch replied calmly. As soon as he finished speaking, the two of them moved at the same time. Red mist condensed in their palms, and their swords broke through the heavens. They were forceful and overbearing as they joined forces to attack the Ink Planet Master. With the two of them working together, the pressure on Mo Zhu increased dramatically. Mo Zhu's expression turned serious. He raised his right hand and another immortal technique appeared. Awaken Yuanming, 7 rainbows bury the sun. Celestial techniques erupted, and the power of laws swept out crazily. An illusory divine sun appeared, and it immediately collapsed into nothingness. The aftermath was shocking, and it instantly swallowed the two of them. Soaring swan pierces the sky. In the collapsing world, a scarlet light shot out. The Red Phoenix Realm monarch used this opportunity to break free. His palm was forceful as it struck the former. When the palm landed, the sword followed. The extreme moves collided with a loud bang. With a muffled groan, Mo Zhu took another half a step back. His incarnation was rapidly unstable, and it showed signs of collapsing. An opportunity appeared. Purple Marquis took a step forward. A sword flew out from the ground and landed in his hand. With a slash of his sword, he took his life. Slash! The sound of the sword piercing through the body rang out. Mo Zhu raised his hand to block the sword. Soon after, he raised his right hand and pointed at the former's chest. Ah! With a bang, blood dyed the sky. Purple Marquis retreated several steps and vomited a mouthful of blood. He was injured for the first time. Ha! One person retreated, while the other instantly advanced. The Red Phoenix Realm monarch gathered her energy and sent a palm strike toward Mo Zhu. The instant the two palms collided, Mo Zhu, who was unable to recover his energy, was forced to retreat several steps. His aura fluctuated and continuously dissipated. Old man, you're finished. Outside the battle, Purple Marquis forcefully suppressed his injuries and took a step forward. With his final sword strike, he circulated all his energy and condensed wind and lightning to form an extreme sword strike. Wrong, you're finished. But at this moment, the battle suddenly changed. The Red Phoenix Realm monarch's palm suddenly changed direction and slammed into Mo Zhu's back. Ah! The sudden change caused Purple Marquis to be unable to react in time. With a muffled groan, his body involuntarily flew forward. Mo Zhu saw this and forcefully circulated his energy. His finger pierced through Mo Zhu's body. In an instant, blood sprayed out like rain. Ah! Purple Marquis staggered several steps back. Looking at the figure not far away, he struggled to turn his head back. Why? To me, it's the same no matter who I cooperate with. However, when he dies, it's just an incarnation. When you die, Purple Marquis will no longer exist in this world, said the Red Phoenix Realm monarch. Ha, so, Purple Marquis laughed heartily. After taking a few steps, blood spurted out from his chest, filling the air with a mist that filled the eyes. In the next moment, Mo Zhu's purple robe fell to the ground. His blood spread and dyed the sand red. Mo Zhu, are you satisfied with my sincerity? Asked the Red Phoenix Realm monarch calmly. The Red Phoenix Realm monarch truly lives up to your reputation. Multicolored light circulated, and Mo Zhu's figure stabilized once again as he spoke. You flatter me. I came this time to take back the immortal slaughtering sword that originally belonged to my realm. With Mo Zhu's wisdom, I'm sure you won't stop me. As for the other things in this world, they all belong to your Mo gate. How about it? Sure, said Mo Zhu calmly. Thanks. The Red Luan Realm monarch said as she walked towards the floating immortal sword. At this moment, Mo Zhu arrived. Seeing that the Red Phoenix Realm monarch was about to snatch away the immortal sword, he slashed out with his sword. Oh! The Red Phoenix Realm monarch focused and scattered the sword with a flip of his palm. He looked at the black-robed youth in front of him and frowned. Old Ninth, don't be impudent. Warned Mo Zhu from within the seven-colored light. Below, Ling Luozhen jumped forward and pulled Mo Zhu back. She shook her head and told him not to be impulsive. So you're Mo Zhu's disciple. Then I won't pursue this matter, said the Red Phoenix Realm monarch calmly. Ning Chen clenched his right hand and a cold light appeared in his eyes. However, he had to suppress his killing intent due to the situation. Ninth junior brother, don't be impulsive. The Red Phoenix Realm Monarch's cultivation isn't weaker than Master's. Moreover, Master's injuries aren't light. It'll be very difficult to snatch the immortal sword away, explained Ling Luozhen. Ning Chen nodded and loosened his clenched fist. The coldness in his eyes disappeared. He couldn't contend against an expert who had just stepped into the immortal corporeal realm. This time, he had to endure. This brief interlude did not cause too much of a ripple. In the silent immortal world, no one dared to step forward and obstruct him. Even if everyone joined forces, they would still appear so insignificant in the face of a terrifying advanced corporeal stage existence. The Red Phoenix Realm Monarch smiled faintly and stepped forward, raising his hand to grab the immortal sword. Suddenly, the expression of the Red Luan Realm Monarch, who was about to grab the immortal sword, changed. In the distance, the sound of footsteps could be heard. The wind whistled as a young man in a luxurious azure robe walked over. The sword on the sword once again descended. You won't be able to take this sword away. His calm voice didn't contain the slightest threat. The appearance of a legend changed the weather. Chapter 624. A legendary battle pet warrior appeared in the immortal palace ruins. The wind and clouds around him changed. An endless sword intent spread out, causing dust and snow to fly everywhere. He was wearing azure clothes, had black hair, and a handsome face. He looked calm and peaceful, without the slightest hint of killing intent or worldly strife. At the sight of the man before him, the devilish body's expression changed slightly, and a hint of surprise flashed through his eyes. The two of them didn't communicate at all. Their azure clothes fluttered in the wind. Although they didn't say anything, they gave everyone an indescribable pressure. Everyone was shocked, unable to come back to their senses. The handsome figure in front of them walked steadily, like a sword immortal descending to the mortal world. The sword hadn't appeared, but the great Tao sensed it. Sword light appeared in the sky, turning into chains that crisscrossed and sealed the sword. A sword light slashed across the realm monarch's hand. Blood spilled out. The sword on the sword was indescribable. The realm monarch and Mo Zhu's expressions became serious. This person was extraordinary. Watch carefully. He taught me how to use the sword. Remember as much as you can in the next battle, said Ning Chen to the little girl beside him. Okay. Looked at the young man in front of her. Her big eyes shone. If he taught Ning Chen how to use the sword, wouldn't he be extremely powerful? The sword rack fell to the ground. The legendary battle pet warrior drew his sword. The azure sword appeared, and the world sensed it. Frost drifted down, and a silver world of ice and snow spread. The legend of the sword appeared again. The oppressive atmosphere became heavier and heavier. The realm monarch's eyes were cold. His figure flashed, and he took the initiative to attack. A red waterfall pierced through the air, soft but firm. The void exploded, unable to withstand the might of the extreme martial arts. Clang! Yan Qin waved his sword. The sword hummed, and the waterfall froze. The sword moved again, and the ice and snow shattered. Red snowflakes drifted down. The scene was so beautiful that it made people intoxicated. The realm monarch rushed forward, red mist curling around his body. He waved his hand, and the red mist surged, condensing into a palm wind. He attacked again. The palm fell, and the sword rose. Waves of dust rolled. The sword light was dazzling, cutting through the red mist. The Red Luan Realm King leaned to the side to avoid the sword, but the sword turned around and followed her like a shadow. The palm wind and the sword light clashed. The figures of the swordsman and the king continued to clash. The sword light was like a graceful swan, the palm wind was like a falling mountain. The two extreme powers clashed, shaking the heaven and earth. His sword was at the pinnacle of elegance. Every move was ordinary yet incomparably precise. His sword dance was breathtaking. It was unfortunate to have lost the sword, but it was fortunate to have seen the sword. Today, I finally recognized the sword. The intoxicated crowd did not know how long the martial art had been. The palm and the sword clashed, the red mist and the sword chi intertwined to create a beautiful movement of life and death. Kings were powerful, but swordsmen were even more immeasurable. Everyone sighed in amazement. So there was actually such a sword on top of the sword. The setting sun shone in the west, and the world was still. The blood-red sunset covered the western horizon, and the setting sun refused to set. It was the heavens that wanted to witness the sword's elegance. Two figures, one big and one small, stood side by side. The small one was nervous, while the big one was abnormally calm. Since the first time they met, that invincible aura had been imprinted in their hearts forever. Whether it was trust or respect, Ji Ming had never thought that his senior would lose. Not in the past, not today, and not in the future. It was not rare for Ji Ming to call him senior. Most of the time, it was just to be polite or to get closer to him. Mu Qiansheng had once joked that Ji Ming's seniors would die the quickest, and friends would be next. Mu Qiansheng's words might have been a coincidence, but it was also true. It was not rare for Ji Ming to call him senior. However, only when facing the legend of Great Xia would it be sincere and not have any ulterior motives. Beside Ji Ming, Yin clenched her fists. Because she did not understand, she was nervous. Don't worry, just focus on the sword, Ning Chen said softly. Oh. Yin raised her head and replied softly. She calmed herself down and focused on the sword. In the battle, the green sword light danced. The sword moved in the snow, and each move became a blur. Without seeing the move could not be broken. The simple sword was dyed red. The Red Luan Realm King's left arm was slashed by the sword. The red fell and dyed her battle clothes. The path of a swordsman was to observe, learn, and comprehend the sword. Only when one saw the sword above the sword, would one know how far the end of the sword was. When she first learned the sword, Yin was lucky. Ji Ming led the way. Today, she saw the only sword again. Her knowledge on the path of the sword far exceeded her peers. Outside the battle, Mo Zhu's expression became more and more serious. It was true that the transformed body was not as good as the original body. However, the Red Luan Realm King's cultivation had reached the late stage of the celestial realm. In a short time, the transformed body was not much weaker than the original body. Who was the swordsman in front of him? Why had he never heard of him before? The setting sun shone on the deity ground. The Red Luan Realm King, who was in a passive position, roared and the red mist around him surged. The formless red mist spread out and turned into crisscrossing ribbons that penetrated the body of the swordsman. The green sword slashed at the red mist. The red mist dispersed, but the momentum did not decrease. The formless could counter the tangible. Seeing this, Prince Yan's expression did not change. He stepped out and retreated. With a wave of his hand, the green sword returned to its scabbard. The sand sword spread out and rushed into the battle. Formless against formless, the two extremes crossed. The legendary stepped back and gradually moved forward. With a rip, the clothes on the Red Luan Realm King's right shoulder were torn. Wisps of sand flew past like the sharpest sword, bringing a waterfall of blood. At this moment, Mo Zhu, who was watching from the side, finally made a move. He raised his right hand and the celestial art appeared again. The seven-colored rainbow shot out with an unparalleled momentum. It covered thousands of feet and suppressed everything. Its shocking power swept toward the swordsman in the battle. As the pressure came, Prince Yan frowned slightly. He waved his left hand and the red sword came out of its scabbard. With a slash, the heroic spirit of the swords gathered and broke the rainbow. The situation of the battle changed in an instant. The Red Luan Realm King and Mo Zhu, who were both transformed bodies, chose to work together to resist the legendary swordsman. Below, seeing the two enter the battle together, the demonic body squinted his eyes. Although there were no ripples, his eyes became colder. Ning Chen, will he be okay? Worry appeared on Yin Er's little face. She shook Ning Chen's arm and asked. Quiet, focus on watching the sword, Ning Chen reprimanded softly. Oh. After being reprimanded, Yin Er didn't dare to be distracted and focused on watching the battle. In the sky, the two powerhouses worked together. The swordsman faced the battle. A cold blade reflected the blood-colored setting sun. Sword sound, flying swan. Prince Yen slashed with the red sword in his hand, and the void collapsed. Red sword waves spread out and forced the two to retreat. Red Luan Realm King, end it quickly. You and I are both transformed bodies. It's not good for us to fight for a long time, Mo Zhu said. Understood. The Red Luan Realm King responded. He flipped his left hand, and a red mist rose rapidly. It was visible to the clouds, and an extremely terrifying power shook the sky. On the other side, Mo Zhu also used the seven-colored celestial art. Suddenly, the sky and the earth were split into two, and seven-colored light illuminated the world. Seeing that the two's moves were not ordinary, Prince Yen condensed Yuan in his right hand and pointed. The green and red swords sped into the sky, and the clouds fell, circling and reflecting each other. Green and red breath together, one breath unrestrained. The two swords fell, and the clouds fell, swallowing everything. In an instant, the red mist and seven-colored light disappeared, swallowed by the clouds. With a groan, the two retreated a few steps. Drops of blood dripped down, and their transformed bodies were injured again. The clouds dispersed, and blood dripped from the corner of Prince Yan's mouth. It was the first time he saw blood since the battle. His sword was endless, and his physical body became a hindrance. Facing the joint attack of the two strongest powerhouses, he finally showed his only weakness. Noticing the former's weakness, Mo Zhu and the Red Luan Realm King gathered their energy and concentrated it to the extreme. One move, ended the legend of the swordsman. Red mist filled the sky, and the seven-colored sun pierced through the sky. The earth-shattering power surpassed the limits of the world. The western celestial world, which was already full of holes, was on the verge of collapse. The scene of doomsday shocked everyone present. The power of reality was indescribable. In the sky, Prince Yen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Looking at the two, he waved his right hand, and the intertwining chains on the celestial sword were released and disappeared. Since you came for the sword, how can I not show you the power of the celestial sword? As soon as he finished speaking, the green, red, and sand swords coiled out at the same time. The sword aura vibrated and resonated with the gods in the swords. The sound of the swords resounded in the universe. The celestial sword responded to the sound, and in the next moment, the celestial sword soared into the sky. The sword aura rumbled, and the sun and moon changed. For swords move the world, and heaven and earth fall together. Prince Yen pointed his finger, and the four swords coiled and rotated. Endless sword pressure swept across 1,000 miles. Suddenly, the sky changed color, and the wind and clouds went crazy. After a moment, a terrifying collision sounded. The red mist and the seven-colored light were annihilated. The two incarnations groaned at the same time, and turned into stars and disappeared between heaven and earth. The celestial world, after going through a series of battles, finally couldn't withstand the destructive power anymore. Pieces of land cracked, and above the 9 heavens, the void collapsed and turned into nothingness. It was the real doomsday. Thousands of miles, gullies spread continuously, and the earth was torn apart. Destruction was imminent. Amidst the rumbling of the battle, the four swords flew back into their sheaths. The last sword was modeled with an ancient intent. It was neither gold nor jade, and it clanged into the sword rack. Prince Yan's expression didn't change. He waved his hand and put away the sword rack, then walked forward. Everyone was so shocked that they subconsciously retreated, not daring to block his path. Once you leave the celestial world, find the sword in tent and come see me. King Yan spoke calmly as they passed each other. Then, he walked away. No one heard his voice. Not even Yin heard him leave. From beginning to end, he didn't stop for even half a step. Ning Chen silently nodded his head and agreed. In the sky, the destroyed celestial palace fell even faster. One palace after another smashed into the ground, causing dust and sand to surge. The 5 disciples of Mo Gate, Princess Hong Wan, the white-robed woman, and the others recovered from their shock and quickly avoided the collapsing world. Next to Ning Chen, Yin swayed back and forth. Because of the shaking earth, she couldn't stand steadily. Ning Chen, this place is going to be destroyed. Let's leave quickly, said Yin with a panicked expression. Yes. Ning Chen nodded lightly. His eyes flickered as he looked at the 5 sons of Mo Gate. This time, Mo Gate could be said to have suffered heavy losses. Not only had they gained nothing, even Master Mo's incarnation had fallen here. He hadn't expected an immortal sword to draw out so many terrifying experts. Was that Princess Hong Wan the source of the Phoenix transformation? Chapter 625. In the celestial world, celestial palaces continuously fell from the sky, creating huge craters one after another. The western celestial world, which had endured successive battles, was completely destroyed. Several streaks of light shot out of the dust and quickly flew into the distance. The celestial palaces had been destroyed and many treasures had appeared at the same time. After countless years, they were finally able to see the light of day again. Seeing this, everyone present was shocked and immediately leaped up to follow. At this moment, every minute and every second was precious. The celestial world was about to be destroyed. They had to leave before that happened. 9th junior brother, this place is too dangerous. I can't take care of you. You should leave first. Ling Luo hurriedly sent him a message and chased after one of the streaks of light. The other 4 disciples of Mo Gate also flew in different directions. This trip to the celestial world had been too much of a failure. This was their last chance. Before they left, they had to gain something. Yin, let's go. Ning Chen softly said. Looking at the streaks of light in the distance, he took the girl beside him and quickly retreated. The streaks of light sped away and disappeared in an instant. Ning Chen avoided the 5 disciples of Mo Gate and flew in a certain direction alone. In front of him, the azure streaks of light were moving faster and faster. The figures chasing after them rushed past one after another, competing with time and with others. The black-robed figure in front reached out to grab the azure streaks of light. At this moment, the azure streaks of light shone brightly and broke through the limits of space. The instant they were caught, they escaped. You can't escape. A cold light flashed in Ning Chen's eyes. He pushed his phoenix origin to the limit. Under the setting sun, a black streak of light flashed past and chased after them. One figure after another followed behind. The difference in their cultivations was gradually revealed. When the cold moon rose in the west, the 2 streaks of light at the edge of the celestial world arrived at the same time. The black-robed figure shouted and sword light soared into the sky, turning into a rain of swords that blocked the path of the azure streaks of light. With the path blocked, the azure streaks of light paused and quickly changed directions. However, the black-robed figure had already arrived behind them. With a flip of his hand, a heavenly net appeared and locked onto the azure streaks of light. With a bang, the azure streaks of light appeared in the violent collision. A palm-sized boat appeared. It was mottled with copper rust and had been eroded by time. Let me see. Yin raised her head curiously. Ning Chen nodded and handed the small boat to the little girl. The small boat in Xiao Chen's hand felt slightly cool. The body of the boat was made of bronze, and it looked somewhat crude. It did not seem like a treasure. It doesn't look good. Looked at it but couldn't find any clues. She pouted and handed the small boat back. Ning Chen took it and didn't say anything. He held the little girl's hand and walked out of the immortal world. Suddenly, at this moment, a linen-clothed figure flashed over from behind. His palm energy was boundless as it tore through the air. Ning Chen sensed it and turned his feet. Amidst the ripples of water, he was already 1,000 feet away. The young man in linen snorted coldly. He took a step forward and leaped forward. His palm energy rumbled as it pressed forward. The celestial trampling force was incomparably vigorous. Ning Chen's eyes narrowed slightly as his figure flashed rapidly. He did not want to face it head-on and only wanted to escape. "How much longer can you hide?" The young man in hemp robe sneered. His palms moved like thunder, striking out one palm after another with shocking power. The palm energy was continuous, and Ning Chen could not avoid it. He waved his hand and held his sword. Wind and clouds swirled on the Taisher sword, and thousands of sword lights met the palm. There was an earth-shattering explosion. In the aftermath, the black-clothed figure retreated. His sword cut through the air, and 100 feet of wild mist whizzed out. Too weak. The young man in linen turned his palm to meet the sword light head-on. The aura around him kept rising. He stepped forward, and his palm energy condensed the airflow in all directions and slapped toward the former. Ning Chen held Er's hand and moved quickly to avoid the palm energy. Immediately, the extreme yang energy on his sword surged. The martial arts of the sun scripture appeared. The rumbling sword light rose 1,000 feet. Within 100 miles, it burned the sky and boiled the sea. The collapsed space could not bear such power and quickly collapsed. Seeing this, Gui Nu's eyes turned cold. He opened and closed his hands, and a wave of yin energy surged. The dense cold current met the attack. With a boom, heaven and earth became chaotic. The black-clothed figure drew a few steps, and a cold smile appeared on his face. He used the momentum to step out of the collapsed immortal world. Sky fall. The moment he retreated, the Taisher sword moved. The sword light rushed into the sky. Thousands of sword lights spun rapidly. In the next moment, thousands of sword lights fell from the sky like a storm, instantly drowning the collapsed land of the immortal world in front of him. The sky fall sword caused heaven and earth to collapse. The void spread, and a strong suction force appeared, swallowing everything around. "If I'm lucky, I'll see you again." Looking at the destroyed land in front of him, Ning Chen said faintly, then turned and left. Outside the immortal world, the star field was shrouded in fog. It was difficult to distinguish the four directions. Only the sword intent shone, pointing out a bright path in the confusion. The familiar sword's aura reached the heart, guiding the lost people out of the lost path. At the end of the fog, the starry sky was vast and beautiful. The young figure in green stood there quietly. He was handsome and otherworldly, like an immortal banished from the sword. People could not help but respect him. Soon, two figures, one big and one small, walked out. When they saw the person in front of them, they respectfully bowed. "Which one?" King Yen asked calmly. "Demon," Ning Chen answered honestly. King Yen nodded and looked at the little girl beside him. "Disciple?" "Yes," Ning Chen answered softly. He patted the little girl's head and said, bow." Greets senior." Bowed obediently. Seeing the junior, King Yan's expression softened. He said, "Come here." Raised her head and looked at the man beside her. Then, she walked over obediently. King Yen waved his hand. Green and red intertwined. Among the specks of light, an invisible sword aura entered the little girl's right hand. "What is this?" Looked at the sword pattern that appeared on her right hand and asked curiously. Sword aura, King Yen said softly. Does Ning Chen have it? Asked, puzzled. His talent is too poor. He can't learn it. It would be a waste to give it to him, King Yen said lightly. Hearing this, smiled. Then, she turned around and made a funny face. Then, she bowed obediently again. Why did you come here? King Yen looked at the junior in front of him and asked. I followed the immortal corpse here. Because I suspected that Gate's master might know something about reviving the dead, I temporarily became a disciple of Gate. Ning Chen briefly recounted the events that had happened in the past few days. However, he only briefly mentioned the matters related to the central state and didn't mention much about them. King Yen patiently listened to him and nodded. Since ancient times, immortal corpses have been patrolling. You need to investigate this matter yourself. As for the method to revive the dead, you can't rush it. Even if such a method exists in the world, it's in the hands of Gate's master, or even an expert above him. With your current strength, you can't contend against such an existence. Ning Chen was silent. He didn't interrupt. I once told you that if you have too much obsession in your heart, it will affect your cultivation. Your body is formed from the resentment of all living beings. You were fortunate enough to escape the phoenix body and form your own body. Originally, you could have abandoned your other thoughts and thrown away the shackles of the world to focus on cultivation. Why did you walk the path of the phoenix body? King Yen frowned. Ning Chen was still silent. After a long time, he softly said, I can't trust the phoenix body right now. Also, I don't know where my original body is. Only I can find the method to revive the ghost woman. If you can trust others, why can't you trust yourself now? The phoenix body and the original body have their own destinies. Since they both chose their own paths, you should walk down them resolutely. In the end, demons are not tolerated by the world. What you should do is continue to focus on cultivation until you have the power to change everything, King Yen replied coldly. Two figures stood in front of the fog. They both looked young and there wasn't much difference between them. However, in front of the cyan-robed legend, the knowing destiny state cultivator would always be a junior. The atmosphere between the two became a bit tense. King Yan's scolding was both a reminder and a lesson for the junior's inaction. Stood to the side, not daring to even breathe loudly. She had seen Ning Chen massacre the entire Central Plains in a fit of anger in the inner realm. She was really worried that the two of them would fight. After a long time, Ning Chen bowed respectfully and said, I've learned my lesson. I'll quickly deal with external matters and then focus on cultivation. King Yan's expression gradually calmed down after hearing Ning Chen's words. He continued, that Master Mo's cultivation is unfathomable. His true strength may far surpass what you showed today. Remember not to expose your identity. Otherwise, there will be a great disaster. I'll remember, Ning Chen replied. I've seen your sword. It's not bad. After they were done talking about business, Prince Yen gave a rare compliment and said, Senior, you're too kind. Ning Chen's deep eyes rippled. After a pause, he said softly, Senior, there's something I might have to trouble you with. What is it? King Yen asked. I once obtained the slaying sword in the Celestial Palace in the Eastern Celestial World. However, when I was fighting against the invasion of the Heavenly Palace, I used the Earth Chi to create a forbidden area. Now, I can't take it out, Ning Chen said. King Yen nodded slightly and said, when I have time, I'll go and help you take it out. Heard this and said sweetly, Senior, when you go back, can you go to the Sword Mountain Manor and tell my mother that I'm fine and that they don't have to worry about me? Sure. King Yen replied and said, it's getting late. Those people in the celestial world should be coming out soon. Remember, no matter how far you go in the future, don't forget to find time to go back to the Great Xia and burn incense for her. Okay. Ning Chen nodded. I'm leaving. Take care. King Yen didn't say anything else and left. The green robe fluttered in the wind. The legend of the Great Xia, the guide of the knowing destiny sword, had spent his life searching for the sword, listening to the sword, and proving the sword. After a trip to the celestial world, he left once again. The green robe gradually disappeared into the starry sky. His tall and straight figure was otherworldly and lonely. There was no trace of an expert, and no one to prove the sword. Perhaps a legend's life should be lonely. Ning Chen watched as Prince Yen left. He was silent. Demons had lost their hearts. They couldn't understand the cold and warmth of the world, but they hadn't lost their minds. The demon body understood, so he remembered every word. Ning Chen, where are we going now? Went forward and held his big hand. Back to Mo planet, Ning Chen said softly. Chapter 626. The western celestial world collapsed, and the experts left. In the starry sky, two figures, one big and one small, walked side by side towards Mo planet. He had gained a lot from the trip to the celestial world. The affirmative answer from the Queen Mother before she disappeared made the doubts that had been lingering in his heart dissipate. He didn't know when he could find the real way to come back from the dead, but as long as there was a glimmer of hope, he had to persevere. Also, there was one thing that he still couldn't understand. Why did the Queen Mother use the golden hairpin to draw a river before she disappeared and bury the black vortex at the end of the celestial world? Something that could make the master of the western celestial world care about was definitely not ordinary. What exactly was that huge black vortex? As for the phoenix body, there were still too many unknowns. He never thought that one day, the person he couldn't trust the most would be himself. After walking for many days, Mo planet was already in front of him. Ning Chen collected his thoughts and stepped in with the little girl. On the platform of Mo mountain, Mo master felt something and opened his eyes. He looked into the distance, and a trace of indescribable brilliance flashed past. Not long after, the black-robed figure walked over and bowed respectfully. Master. Mo master nodded and said, "It's good that you're back. Go back and rest first." Yes. Ning Chen bowed again and walked away. Outside Mou Peak, the big hand held the little hand and walked towards the 9th peak together. A day later, on Mou Peak, 5 figures returned at the same time. The leader of the 3rd peak, Ling Yun, bowed respectfully and then described the journey to the celestial world in detail. On the platform, Mo Master's old face didn't change at all after hearing the former story. He nodded slightly and said, "I already know. You can all leave." The 5 of them bowed together and turned to leave. On the 9th peak, the black-robed figure stood quietly and looked in the direction of Mou Peak. His pitch-black eyes were like an abyss, and no one could see any changes in his emotions. Behind him, was working hard to practice her sword. Every move was still just the basics. The red sword made of green bamboo hummed in the wind. Faintly, there were waves of phoenix cries and sword auras that coiled around the sword. Learning martial arts required aptitude. Aptitude was without a doubt. Coupled with the fact that she had once used phoenix blood to train her martial bones, her foundation had long surpassed the so-called martial arts geniuses. Knowing Destiny's State was not a genius, so he never regarded as a genius. He taught her the basics, day after day, and he only taught her the basics of the basics. Learning swordsmanship was very boring, especially when it was just a few basic moves every day. When the little girl was tired of practicing, she would always throw a tantrum. However, Ning Chen, who had always indulged the little girl, did not give in at all on this matter. He knew very well that if he didn't suffer the hardest of hardships, he wouldn't be able to comprehend the essence of the sword. There was no lack of geniuses in this world. Geniuses who could not fulfill their talents were useless. The sun moved west in the horizon, and a day gradually passed by. When the sun was about to set, a calm voice traveled to the 9th summit from the distance. "Ninth junior brother, come to the 3rd summit." Hearing this, Ning Chen turned around and looked at the 3rd peak in the distance. His eyes narrowed slightly. Continue practicing your swordsmanship. I'm going out for a while. I'll be back soon." As he spoke, the black robes shot out and turned into a stream of light that flew towards the 3rd summit. Seeing this, pursed her lips and continued practicing her swordsmanship. On the 3rd summit, a young man in yellow was tidying up the herb field on the summit. The herb field was less than 100 feet square, and stalks of great herbs grew in it. The medicinal fragrance assailed the nose, and just smelling it made one feel relaxed and happy. In the herb field, the yellow-robed man had an ordinary appearance. His aura was restrained, and there was nothing special about him. He was even inferior to an ordinary warrior. However, only the members of Mo clan knew that the master of the 3rd summit was the strongest person in Mo clan. Besides, Master Mo Ling Luojian had once said that although they were both at the advanced stage of the immortal void realm, the possibility of her defeating Ning Chen in a real fight was less than 10%. Ning Chen appeared in front of the herb field and looked at the yellow-robed man in the herb field. He said politely, "Third senior brother." Ling Yun raised his head and smiled gently. "You're here. Wait for a while. I'll be done soon." Ning Chen nodded and waited outside the herb field calmly. About half an hour later, Ling Yun finished tidying up the great herbs in the herb field and walked out. "Sorry to keep you waiting," Ling Yun said with a smile. "Third senior brother is too courteous," Ning Chen replied. Ling Yun smiled. "Actually, I didn't call you here for anything too important. It's just that there are some small matters that I'm worried about." After thinking about it, only 9th junior brother is the most suitable. "Third senior brother, please tell me," Ning Chen replied. "I'll be going out for a while. I'm worried about the plants here, so I'll have to ask junior brother to help me take care of them," Ling Yun said softly. "How long will it take?" Ning Chen frowned. "I don't know." Ling Yun shook his head. "Perhaps 10 days, perhaps several months, perhaps." Ling Yun paused and didn't continue. He smiled and said, "In any case, before I return, I'll have to trouble junior brother to take care of these herbs." Ning Chen nodded lightly and agreed. "One last thing. I heard that junior brother's attainments in the sword are extraordinary. I wonder if senior brother would have the honor of exchanging pointers with junior brother." Ling Yun waved his hand and a wooden box flew out from the bamboo house behind him. The instant it opened, a white sword as thin as a cicada's wing flew out. The sound of the sword was mournful and piercing. "Third senior brother knows how to use the sword." Ning Chen's eyes narrowed. He had never seen Ling Yun use the sword in the Western Celestial world, nor had he heard Ling Luojian and Qi Huan mention it. "I know a little." Ling Yun gripped his sword. "Junior brother is fortunate." Ning Chen's expression turned serious. He waved his hand and a green light flowed. Taisher appeared. "Please. Please." Ling Yun moved first. A white light shot out and his sword danced with him. His exquisite swordsmanship was beginning to show its sharpness. Ning Chen swung his sword to block. With a clang, the sword light was dazzling and the sword hummed. The sword in Ling Yun's hand spun and changed its momentum. It was like Chao Yi coming out of the water. The sword intent was dense. The sword changed extremely quickly. The sword was real and the sword was illusory. It was impossible to distinguish between them. Ning Chen's eyes flashed. His sword moved, and his body moved with the sword to meet the exquisite sword. The two swords clashed and separated upon contact. In the clash of quick swords, each sword was faster than the last. As the sword light flashed, his black hair fluttered. The free and easy style created a picturesque battle of swordsmen. On the other four peaks, Ling Luojian, Qi Huan, and the other 4 disciples of the Mahist sect looked at the third peak to watch the battle of swordsmen. They didn't know that third senior brother's attainments in the sword were so extraordinary. White Rainbow. Meeting a worthy opponent in the sword was the fortune of a lifetime. However, he couldn't help it. The sword in the final battle was filled with sorrow. Ning Chen listened carefully. His sword moved, and his body moved. The crisscrossing white rainbow was unusually beautiful. The sword light in the rainbow was indiscernible. It was the first time in the world to see such a stunning sword. Suddenly, there was a mournful sword hum. It played one sound after another in the rainbow. Suddenly, a blinding red dripped down from the sword and dyed the ground in front of him red. Taishi's sword entered his body by half an inch. The final chapter of the sword technique quietly ended at its most beautiful moment. Why? Ning Chen asked with a frown. There's no reason. The winner is stronger. Junior brother, you won. Ling Yun revealed an indescribable smile as he spoke softly. His body broke free, and the sword left his body. Blood flowed down. It was a beautiful sight. Victory and defeat were clear. At that moment, it became blurry and difficult to distinguish. The white rainbow flew back into the wooden box, and the sword hum disappeared. Ning Chen, it's getting late. I won't keep you any longer. Please go back, Ling Yun said with a smile. Farewell, junior brother. When Ning Chen heard that, he suppressed the doubts in his heart and bowed politely again. Then, he rushed towards the 9th peak. A hint of sadness flashed through Ling Luozhen's eyes. She had stalled for time, but she had pushed third senior brother to the front. Ling Luozhen, don't be sad for me. Everyone has their own fate. I have no regrets in this life. A calm voice rang out without much emotion. The battle of swords had ended his last regret. Senior brother, is there really no way to change it? Ling Luozhen asked sorrowfully. 9th junior brother is different from anyone I've ever met. Perhaps you can get the answer to your question from him. However, I can't wait any longer, so I'll take my leave first. I hope you can come a little later on the Bridge of Helplessness. On the 3rd peak, Ling Yun smiled faintly. He carried the sword box on his back and walked down the mountain. On the various peaks, the 4 disciples of Mo Gate bowed together to send third senior brother off. On the 9th peak, Ning Chen's eyes deepened. His heart felt heavy as he looked at Ling Yun. Although he couldn't feel the aura of the sword just now, he could hear the bleakness of the sword hum. This battle wasn't just a spar. It was more like a farewell. On Legacy Peak, Mo Gate opened his eyes and looked at Ling Yun. After a long time, he sighed softly. On the 10th day, Mo Mountain was still as peaceful as before. However, on the 11th day, a young man came up the mountain with the sword box on his back. Mo Gate, big brother Ling Yun said that he wanted to send this sword to the 9th peak. On Legacy Peak, the young man bowed respectfully and put down the sword box. On the ground, the blood-stained sword box was red and dazzling. The rainbow sword in the box let out a faint cry. You can go. Mo Gate's old eyes flashed with a hint of emotion as he sighed softly. Thank you, Mo Gate. The young man bowed respectfully. An hour later, the young man ascended the 9th peak. He looked at the black-clothed figure in front of the peak and said respectfully, Mr. 9th, big brother Ling Yun asked me to send this sword over. Please accept it. The sword box opened and a white rainbow lay quietly inside. The blood on the sword was glaring. Third senior brother, Ling Luozhen, Qi Huan, and the others appeared. When they saw the white rainbow sword, their hearts ached at the same time. The sword has been delivered. I'll take my leave. The young man put down the sword box and bowed politely again before turning to leave. May I ask what your name is? Ling Luozhen came back to her senses and looked at the young man. The young man stopped in his tracks, turned around, and said calmly, "I'm just an ordinary person who delivers the sword. My name is not important to you gentlemen. We'll meet again." After saying that, the young man did not say anything else and walked into the distance. After the young man left, the 5 figures on the 9th peak looked at the white rainbow sword in the sword box and stood silently. After a long time, the masters of the 6th and 7th peaks sighed deeply and walked away. 9th junior brother, since 3rd senior brother has given this sword to you, keep it well. After taking one last look at the white rainbow, Chi Huan looked at the young man in front of him and sighed softly. At the side, Ling Luozhen's slender hands were pale and the sadness in her eyes could not be concealed. Why? Could it be that their fate could only be like this? Chapter 627. On the 9th peak, the 4 disciples left. The sadness they felt when they left was not fake, nor was it the sadness of losing a fellow disciple, or perhaps it was the helplessness they felt towards their own fate. In the blood-stained sword case, the white rainbow was dripping with blood. It hummed faintly, and the sorrowful sound from the sword made people feel a chill. Ning Chen looked at the little girl who was practicing her sword not far away and said softly, "What's the matter?" Jogged over and asked, "Can you feel the presence of this sword?" Ning Chen asked. Hearing this, went forward and touched the white rainbow sword, trying her best to feel the presence of the sword. After a long while, stood up and said with an ashamed expression, "I only heard the sorrowful sound from the sword. I couldn't hear anything else." "It's fine." Ning Chen rubbed the little girl's hair gently and said calmly, "You've only been cultivating for a short period of time. It's already very impressive that you can sense this. Continue practicing your sword." "Okay." Responded and jogged to the bamboo forest to continue practicing her sword. In front of the peak, Ning Chen waved his hand and put away the white rainbow sword. He looked at the distant legacy peak, and his dark eyes flashed with light. Before Ling Yun left, he seemed to have already known his fate. Why did he leave? Chi Huan and Ling Luozhen clearly knew something, but why did they refuse to say it? How many secrets were hidden in Mahist sect? What role did Master Mo play in all of this? Many questions surrounded his heart like fog. Ning Chen thought for a long time, but he could not find an answer. He retracted his gaze and took a step forward, heading towards the 3rd peak. After a few breaths, the black-robed figure appeared on the 3rd peak and walked towards the bamboo house on the peak. The wooden door opened. There was only a bed, a table, and a chair in the room. It was simple and plain, and there was nothing else. Ning Chen looked at it for a moment, then turned his gaze to other places on the peak. The peak was calm and peaceful. Apart from a herb field, there was nothing unusual about the other places. Herb field. Ning Chen's brows suddenly furrowed as he walked over. The herb field was less than 10 feet wide, and there were many large herbs growing within it. The fragrance of the herbs filled the air and spread over 10 miles. It wasn't a secret that the 3rd peak's master was good at growing medicine. Every single one of the 100 stalks of great medicine was priceless. The royal family of the mortal world had come to Mo Mountain's 3rd peak to ask for medicine no less than 10 times. However, Ling Yun, who had always treated people kindly, had never agreed to this matter even once. Ning Chen looked at the 100 great herbs before him, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. An entire hour passed, and his gaze didn't move away at all. 2 hours later, Ning Chen looked at the place where he had fought with the Lingyun sect. His eyes sparkled. With a light step, his silhouette flashed with extreme speed. His strange footwork was exactly the same as he walked among the 100 stalks of great herbs, reenacting every step Lingyun took during the battle back then. With the final step, the void shook, and the black-robed figure quietly disappeared. Ning Chen walked out of the strange and silent space. In front of him, there was a stone room. Energy swirled around it, and it was bone-chilling. Ning Chen walked forward and waved his hand to open the stone door. As the door rumbled, a shocking scene entered his eyes. On the table in front of him, there were many memorial tablets with unfamiliar names. Other than two, he had never heard of the others before. At the end of the memorial tablet, there was a memorial tablet with the words Ling Yun carved on it. Once again, he saw himself erecting a memorial tablet for himself. It was shocking. At the second last position, the words Huayang were clear and glaring. It was obviously the same person as the tombstone he had seen at the back of the 9th peak. 6 memorial tablets and 6 names were clearly imprinted in Ning Chen's heart. It was so heavy. The 1st peak, 2nd peak, 3rd peak, 4th peak, and 9th peak. Ning Chen's thoughts kept spinning. If these people were all former peak masters, then who was this extra person? Zi Chuan, an unfamiliar name. He had never heard Qi Huan and the others mention it. Unable to figure it out, Ning Chen gathered his thoughts and walked out of the stone room. In the herb field, the void flashed, and Ning Chen walked out. Then, his figure flashed, and he flew towards another peak. On the platform of Legacy Peak, Master Emo opened his eyes and looked at the 9th disciple who had left the 3rd peak. His old eyes were deep and there were no emotions. On the 8th peak, Ling Luozhen stood on the cliff. Her silver hair danced in the wind as she looked into the distance. She could not hide the sadness in her eyes. At that moment, the black-robed man walked out and looked at the woman in front of the cliff. 8th senior sister. Ling Luozhen turned around and looked at the young figure behind her. She asked softly, "What is it?" "Who is Lu Luo?" Ning Chen asked directly. When Ling Luozhen heard this, her body trembled and disbelief flashed in her eyes. "How do you know this name?" "8th senior sister, don't ask me how I know first. Can you tell me who this person is?" Ning Chen narrowed his eyes and asked. "The former peak master of the 4th peak," Ling Luozhen said in a heavy tone. "What about Yu Zhu?" Ning Chen asked again. "The peak master of the 2nd peak," Ling Luozhen replied. "Xiang Yuan." "The peak master of the 1st peak." "Huayang." "The peak master of the 9th peak." The names and heavy answers were just as Ning Chen had guessed. The people on the tokens were all former peak masters. "What about Zi Chuan?" "Who is he?" Ning Chen asked. When she heard this name, Ling Luozhen fell silent. After a long while, she said, "I'm not too sure about this person. He seems to be the former peak master of the 7th peak. However, under normal circumstances, if something happens to the peak masters, no one will take over. I don't know why the 7th peak is an exception. Why won't anyone take over the 9th peak? Including me, there have been 2 peak masters of the 9th peak," Ning Chen said with a frown. "Your situation is different," Ling Luozhen said softly. "Why?" Ning Chen did not understand. "I can't tell you. Don't ask any more. If it's possible, it's best if you don't know for the rest of your life," Ling Luozhen warned solemnly. A strange look flashed in Ning Chen's eyes. He bowed politely. "Thank you for telling me, 8th senior sister. I'll take my leave now." Once he finished speaking, Ning Chen did not stay any longer. He turned around and left. Ling Luozhen sighed softly as she watched him leave. Did 3rd senior brother leave some clues for him? Could it be that 3rd senior brother really thought that 9th junior brother could change their fate? At the back of the 9th peak, Ning Chen, who had come with doubts, walked out and headed straight into the depths of the forest. In the dense ancient forest, huge trees blocked out the sun. The black-robed figure disappeared in a flash. Just as Ning Chen approached the depths of the forest, the air pressure around him suddenly sank. The sky and earth seemed to be pressing down on him, and the entire 9th summit started trembling. Primal chaos appeared, a man with a ferocious appearance. The evil face behind him was sinister and terrifying. A powerful punch blasted towards the intruder. Ning Chen waved his hand and held his sword. The Taisher appeared and blocked the punch. Human, it's you again. The fist and sword collided, and the aftermath spread out. Ancient trees fell one after another, broken by the sword chi and fist force. Hun Dun, I'm here to ask you something. I'm not here to kill you, Ning Chen said in a low voice. Trespassing into the secluded forest is an unforgivable crime. Last time, I let you off because of that old monster. This time, no one will be able to save you, said the man coldly. His fist smashed out, once again pressing towards Qin Shi. Seeing that it was difficult to communicate with the beast, Ning Chen's eyes turned cold. He waved his sword and decided to use force to subdue the enemy first before talking about anything else. The figure that crossed each other had an astonishing amount of chaotic energy. His punches were heavy, and every move he made could collapse mountains and the earth. Ning Chen could not be shaken. He waved his sword to meet the attack. His footwork changed, and he moved away as soon as he touched the attack. In the blink of an eye, they had exchanged more than 10 moves. The man's fists collided, and an extremely powerful force surged out. The next moment, both fists punched out, threatening to take one's life. Ning Chen's eyes narrowed. He stepped forward, and his figure flashed past. He waved his left hand, and the fogbow sword box appeared. The box opened, and a sword as thin as a cicada's wing flew out. The moment it entered his hand, he disappeared again and reappeared in front of the man. The man's eyes narrowed, and he changed the direction of his fist and punched at Ning Chen. However, in terms of speed, knowing destiny was faster. He turned sideways, and the fogbow sword twisted and wrapped around the man's arm. Fogbow sword. The man trembled at the familiar sword. Swoosh. The moment the fogbow sword locked onto the man's arm, Taisher swung his sword and cut off the man's arm. In an instant, blood sprayed out like rain, dyeing the sky red. The man roared in pain, and his eyes shone with a bloody light. His body changed, and his evil form roared. Amidst the earth-shattering sound, the chaotic energy took form and swallowed the void in front of him. Evil creature. On the leaving message peak, Master Mo opened his eyes and raised his hand to save the man. Suddenly, a sword chi broke through the air from afar. It was extremely domineering, and it cut half of the leaving message peak. Rumbling sounds could be heard as countless formation runes crumbled. The earth moved, and the mountains moved. The scene was truly shocking. Purple Marquis. At this moment, the 4 disciples of Mo Gate trembled, and their faces were filled with disbelief. Purple Marquis had clearly died in the hands of the Red Luan Realm Monarch and their master in the Western Celestial World. Why would he appear again today? In the distance, the man walking over looked to be in his 30s. He was dressed in purple and exuded a domineering aura. It was actually Purple Marquis, who had died in the Western Celestial World. On the Dao platform, Master Mo looked at the man walking over. There was not much surprise in his eyes. He raised his hand, and a 7-colored light spread out, stabilizing the trembling ground. Old man, you're satisfied that I'm not dead, right? Today, we'll settle the old and new debts together. Purple Marquis took a step forward and instantly arrived on the Dao platform. A purple sword appeared and slashed down. It seems that you don't remember what I said to you. Master Mo said softly. He raised his right hand, and a 7-colored light shone brightly, blocking the sword. Put away your hypocritical face. I'm no longer the idiot from back then. Purple Marquis could not hide the hatred in his eyes. His sword spun, and a purple sword light swept out, majestic and domineering. Master Mo's figure rose, and his white robe fluttered in the wind. He raised his hand, and a 7-colored light pierced through the sun and moon. Purple Marquis condensed energy in his left hand, and rays of sword light surrounded his sword. His sword art and immortal art fused together, and a shocking sword broke through the sky. Immortal art, purple rainbow piercing the sun. The seven-colored light and purple light collided, and a terrifying shockwave rushed out. The shocking power instantly destroyed all the formation runes within 1,000 feet. With a muffled groan, the purple sword chi pierced through the seven-colored light and entered Master Mo's body, bringing out a splash of blood. Are you surprised? Old man, I've bitterly cultivated for 100 years just for today. Die. Purple Marquis' figure flashed, and his sword condensed the heroic chi of the 8 directions, and a sword broke through the sky. Chapter 628. In the Battle of Wind and Cloud on EU Peak, Purple Marquis went all out to kill Mo Xing's master. The purple divine sword's radiance illuminated the sky. With danger looming over him, Mo Xing's eyes glowed with 7 colors. Amidst the overflowing colors, the radiance surged out from his body. The appearance of an immortal technique, the rainbow light protected his body. Streaks and streaks of rainbow light circled around his body, protecting every vital part of his body. It was an absolute defense without any flaws. The sword radiance trembled violently. The rainbow light dissipated the sword intent. The life-reaping sword was actually useless. Rainbow Burial Sun. The moment the sword edge was restrained, Mo Xing raised his hand. The power of law within 100 miles swirled wildly. In the void before him, an illusory divine sun appeared. It instantly shattered and devoured the person in front of him. The divine sun buried life, it was unavoidable. Purple Marquis roared furiously. The purple aura on his sword surged and sealed 100 feet of void, opening up a new world. In the illusory space, the 2 techniques clashed violently. The techniques of the stepping immortal realm experts clashed directly. The vast True Yuan shook violently. The ground within 100 miles, 1,000 miles, shook violently. The might was horrifying. After a few breaths, an earth-shattering explosion occurred. The aftermath spread out and drowned the entire EU peak. The symbol of Mo Gate was about to be destroyed. At this moment, in the aftermath, the power of extreme yin and extreme yang rose. The black and white brilliance pierced through the sky and stabilized the collapsing EU peak. Immortal technique, waning moon. The moment the heavens and earth stopped, Mo Xing raised his hand again. A black moon appeared in the mortal world. Black and white intertwined, showing an imperfection in the perfection. The ordinary immortal technique froze the heaven and earth. After a short moment of silence, a shocking terror appeared. With the power of law, Purple Marquis' body, along with the imperfection of the full moon, started to crack from his left arm and gradually spread out. The tearing pain came. Purple Marquis' face was distorted and cold sweat dripped down. Old man, you can't kill me. With a furious roar, Purple Marquis chopped off his left arm. Blood gushed out and dyed half of his body red. Demon descends. The situation was critical. There was no room for hesitation. Purple Marquis' eyes were filled with anger. The black aura around him soared into the sky. The violent black aura surged endlessly and shattered the moon. Within the black chi, the transformed figure had demonic runes crisscrossing on his face. His eyes were deathly pale and had lost their pupils. He looked frighteningly sinister, causing one to tremble in fear. Behind him, a gigantic demonic shadow appeared. It was hundreds of meters tall, and its demonic aura was incomparably majestic and terrifying. Sky Devil's Soul. When Mo Zhu saw this, his expression became solemn, and he said in a deep voice, "You have fallen. As long as I can kill you, I am willing to give up everything." With the devil's soul in his body, Purple Marquis' expression became much calmer. The devil chi in his pale eyes surged. With a slight movement of his feet, his figure instantly disappeared. As the tip of the sword fell, the demonic shadow behind him punched out at the same time. With the help of the demonic chi, wherever the sword passed, the void collapsed and turned into nothingness. Mo Zhu flipped his palm and blocked the sword, but he felt an unshakable force coming at him. His arm went numb and he took half a step back. Purple Heaven Thunder. The moment Mo Zhu retreated, Purple Marquis stepped forward again. The purple chi on his sword soared into the 9 heavens. In an instant, the wind and clouds in the sky changed. Furious thunder rumbled and fell from the sky. With the help of the heavenly thunder, the sword's power was several times stronger. Lightning surged and broke toward Mo Zhu's heart. When the sword arrived, the terrifying destructive power instantly destroyed all the obstacles between the two and reached Mo Zhu's heart. At the critical moment, 7 colored immortal rainbows revolved around Mo Zhu's body. He used his flawless absolute defense to block the sword. However, with the help of the lightning, the sword collided with the immortal rainbows. The two moves collided. The unstoppable sword and the absolute unparalleled defense collided fiercely. After a moment of stalemate, the demonic shadow behind Purple Marquis punched the sword hilt. Suddenly, the stalemate changed. The sword broke through the immortal rainbows and penetrated Mo Zhu's heart. With a groan, Mo Zhu took a few steps back. He raised his hand to grab the sword and raised his right hand. The immortal technique appeared again. Immortal technique, joys and sorrows. This was the first time an immortal technique appeared in the mortal world. The black moon and the white sun appeared in the mortal world. In the next moment, yin and yang intersected and were annihilated at the same time. Ah! With a painful cry, Purple Marquis's pale eyes spurted blood. Along with the annihilation of the sun and moon, they completely lost their brilliance. Seeing the opportunity, Mo Zhu's right hand circulated his true essence and imprinted it on the chest of the person in front of him. Ugh! Blood splattered and mist covered Purple Marquis's eyes. The moment Purple Marquis was sent flying, the sword slashed and sword chi penetrated his body. Mo Zhu couldn't block the sword chi in time. The sword chi entered his heart and the true essence around him shook violently. On the other side, the purple-robed figure fell to the ground. Blood flowed and dyed his body red. The unwillingness of defeat lingered in his heart. Purple Marquis struggled to get up. Blood kept dripping from his eyes. It was difficult for him to see the prosperity of the mortal world. He had been fooled his whole life. Even until today, he still couldn't change his fate. Purple Marquis was unwilling and angry. He roared and his white hair soared. Extreme hatred and anger. Purple Marquis stepped into the sky. The sword in his hand absorbed the demonic essence. Blood mist gushed out and a forbidden technique appeared. His cultivation broke through the limit and reached an unprecedented level. The sword that fell from the sky was breathtaking. The world couldn't bear its might and was instantly destroyed. His final move gathered all his blood essence. Purple Marquis gave up everything. He wanted to die together with his enemy. Your martial arts were all taught to you by me. Is betrayal how you repay me? Mo Zhu's eyes turned cold. He slowly raised his right hand, and an unseen power surged out. It surpassed all understanding and reformed the collapsed world. Ugh! The might of the extreme heavens spread out and submerged Purple Marquis's body. Blood sprayed out and the sword dissipated. Purple Marquis crashed into the 7th peak. You, aren't you? Disbelief twisted his face. Blood flowed out of Purple Marquis's mouth. He was halfway through his sentence, but he couldn't say anything else. The white-robed Mo Zhu appeared 30 meters away from Purple Marquis. He raised his hand and grabbed Purple Marquis's throat. I've already let you off several times. Why are you courting death again and again? Asked Mo Zhu coldly. Old bastard, as long as I'm alive, I won't let you live peacefully. With his throat grabbed, Purple Marquis found it hard to breathe. From today onwards, you won't have that chance anymore. Mo Zhu raised his left hand, and multicolored light spread out, submerging Purple Marquis. As killing intent surged, the void in front of Purple Marquis rotated, and a dazzling wheel appeared, blocking the 7-colored light. A moment later, an indistinct shadow appeared and took Purple Marquis away, disappearing without a trace. Mo Zhu waved his hand to scatter the wheel. He narrowed his eyes as he looked in the direction the two had left. When the spectators saw the change in the battle, their eyes were filled with disbelief. How was it possible for the person who attacked just now? Thousands of miles to the north of Ink Mountain, ancient martial families stood in a flourishing human dynasty. Ink City was an ancient city that had been passed down for thousands of years. Martial arts were prevalent here, and martial artists could be seen everywhere. There was a mansion in the western part of the city. It was quiet. Within a room, a heavily injured Purple Marquis was lying on a stone bed. Two figures stood beside him. "How is he?" asked one of them. "His internal organs are heavily injured, and his vitality is exhausted. His soul is also heavily injured." "It's very troublesome," replied the other. "Can you save him?" asked the person who had spoken earlier. "As long as he doesn't die, he can be saved," replied the green-clothed woman. "Ha!" The man smiled faintly. "I ask too much. Is there anything I can do?" "Yes." The green-clothed woman nodded. She looked at the door and said calmly, "Leave this room." The man's expression froze. He smiled embarrassedly and walked out. The door closed with a creak. Only the green-clothed woman and the unconscious Purple Marquis were left in the room. The atmosphere was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. The green-clothed woman walked forward and sat by the bed. She tore off the clothes on Purple Marquis' upper body and condensed her yuan. Specks of green light rose and entered Purple Marquis' body. After a few breaths, the green-clothed woman stopped. She flipped her left palm and a white jade box appeared. When the box opened, a strange flower flew out. Immediately, the entire room was filled with the fragrance of flowers. A moment later, the separation and reunion flower dissipated, turning into a stream of light that merged with Purple Marquis' severed left arm. The green-clothed woman pressed her hand down, and a shocking scene appeared. Purple Marquis' severed left arm regrew at a speed visible to the naked eye. After doing this, the green-clothed woman stood up and walked out of the room. Outside the room, the man waited quietly. When he saw the woman walk out, he stepped forward and asked with concern, "How is he?" "He won't die." After saying this, the green-clothed woman changed the topic and said indifferently, "But I wasted another 9 wonders separation and reunion flower. Saving people is more important. If there's a chance, I'll find another one for you." The man smiled. The green-clothed woman looked at the man as if he was an idiot and walked away. The man helplessly touched his nose. He seemed to have said something wrong again. He opened the door and walked in. The man looked at the unconscious Purple Marquis on the stone bed and sighed softly. Obsession and hatred could devour a person's rationality. He had never thought that Purple Marquis would go to such an extent for the sake of revenge. At the same time, on Emo Mountain's 9th peak, Ning Chen had not returned for a long time. Walked into the forest alone to search, not caring about what was happening on the other peaks. The afterglow of the setting sun was about to disappear. Walked in the forest, looking left and right. An hour ago, she clearly felt that a great battle had happened here. Why was there no trace of Ning Chen? The forest was deep and serene. Under the gradually darkening sky, it seemed even gloomier. Everywhere was gloomy and cold. Feeling the abnormal atmosphere around her, a trace of fear flashed across Er's small face. Although she was a martial artist close to the Xiantian realm, she was still young and did not have much courage. In the depths of the forest, Han Dun opened his eyes and looked at the figure in the distance. His eyes revealed a fierce glint. "Ning Chen, are you there? Answer me if you hear me." The afterglow disappeared and the sky darkened. The rustling sound of leaves rustling could be heard. Was so scared that she did not dare to walk anymore. She stood where she was and called out softly. However, there was no response from the depths of the forest. There was only endless silence, which made one's hair stand on end. Ta! At this moment, footsteps could be heard from everywhere in the forest. It was so clear that it could be heard. Er's face lit up and she immediately ran over. After running a few steps, stopped and looked at the figure walking out of the forest. The smile on her face froze. Chapter 629. In the dense forest at the back of the 9th summit, Hun Dun appeared. The evil face behind him was ferocious and terrifying. When saw who it was, she was shocked. Without another word, she turned around and ran. The man took a step forward. Under the moonlight, the eyes of the evil face of Hun Dun were bone-chilling. It was like the greediest beast, choosing its prey to devour. On the various peaks, the 4 disciples of Mo clan who had just watched the fierce battle were still in shock. No one noticed the change in the 9th summit. At Legacy Peak, Mo clan master returned to the Dao platform. At this moment, he looked at the 9th summit, and a glint flashed across his old eyes. At the same time, Black Robe walked alone in the dark space. The cold and eerie world around him made him shudder. When he looked around, there was nothing around him. It was abnormally quiet and he could not hear any movement. Ning Chen released his divine consciousness and walked forward while paying attention to the changes in his surroundings. The distorted space made it difficult for people to feel the flow of time. After walking for an unknown period of time, the surroundings were still quiet and there was no sign of life. The strange space and time seemed strange, but Ning Chen was not unfamiliar with it. In fact, he was very familiar with it. Hun Dun, Phoenix, Tao Tai. The seeds in their bellies were the innate abilities of some of the top divine beasts in aristocratic families. Among them, Tao Tai and Hun Dun were the best at devouring all things and turning them into their own bodies. He walked forward and there was no end in sight. There was only endless silence that trapped him. After taking a few more steps, he suddenly saw heavy rain falling from the sky. The ground was covered in fog and the sizzling sound of corrosion was endless. Ning Chen composed himself and a red sword light shot out. It crisscrossed and blocked the poisonous rain. In the rain, Black Robe's aura surged and his divine consciousness spread out in all directions. The poisonous rain fell faster and faster, blurring his vision and drowning his Black Robe. Suddenly, Ning Chen stopped and looked to the side with narrowed eyes. In the heavy rain, a valley could be vaguely seen in the distance. Even from afar, he could see the terrifying traces of corrosion on the mountain. Without hesitation, Ning Chen's figure flashed out and headed straight for the valley. There was a rumble. At this moment, thunder rumbled in the sky and disrupted his thoughts. In the valley, corpses were everywhere. The huge rocks on the mountain blocked the rain and many of the corpses had not been completely corroded. In front of him, all the skeletons were gathered under the cliffs and boulders. It seemed that they had been devoured when they were alive and were squeezed under the cliffs to avoid the poisonous rain. Rumbling sounds could be heard as one of the cliffs in the valley could no longer withstand the erosion of the rain. It fell from the sky and crashed into the ground. In an instant, the rain drowned the white bones, and in a few breaths of time, a large number of bones were completely corroded. Rumble. Another huge rock crashed down, and even more bones were exposed to the poisonous rain. Not long after, they disappeared into the curtain of rain. Shocking scenes could be seen everywhere. It was unknown just how many creatures were buried in the belly of primal chaos. At this moment, they were buried under the rain. The cliffs, which had been corroded by the poisonous rain over the years, fell from time to time. The earth rumbled and shook. After an unknown period of time, the rain gradually stopped. Around Ning Chen's body, the streaks of sword light that were coiling around him dissipated and retreated back into his body. The valley was so deep that he couldn't see the end of it. Ning Chen walked forward and looked around with his deep eyes. He felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't tell why. It was obvious that everything in this world of Messen had been corroded by the poisonous rain. The only thing that still existed was this crumbling valley. However, why would there be such a huge valley in the belly of primal chaos? If it wanted to devour creatures to increase its power, it would have chosen a human city. After walking for a long time, blood stains appeared on a cliff where the rain couldn't reach. They seeped into the cliff and turned dark brown with the passage of time. Ning Chen squinted his eyes. It was the blood of a warrior. Judging from the degree of corrosion, this place had existed for at least 100 years. The blood of ordinary people and creatures would have been completely corroded. Not even a trace would be left behind. Seeing the warrior's blood, Ning Chen became more suspicious. He followed the blood stains and walked forward step by step, looking for the truth that had been hidden by the passage of time. There were more and more blood stains on the road ahead. It was obvious that the warrior's injuries were getting worse and worse. A large pool of blood seeped into the cliff. Finally, a few blood-stained words appeared under a concave cliff. They were clear and dazzling. I'm going to die. What should I do? I have a younger sister who is not even 8 years old. I can't die. Who can save me? It was a miserable scene 100 years ago. The young warrior kept coughing up blood and used his blood to carve words on the cliff again and again. He hoped that someone would see them and save his life. The despair and helplessness in the words were very clear. The young warrior was worried about his younger sister, so he bitterly held on, unwilling to give up. In front of him, a bloody handprint could be vaguely seen on the bloody cliff. The young warrior walked forward, coughing up blood every 3 steps. He held on to the cliff and struggled to move forward. Who can save me? The young warrior kept coughing up blood. With every step he took, he was 1 step closer to the underworld. Ning Chen looked at the blood stains on the cliff, and his eyes became increasingly deep. What happened 100 years ago? Who was the owner of the words? Did the primal chaos swallow the entire valley because of this person? There were other hidden reasons. I can't die. At the end of the valley, the last blood stains fell. It was a helpless desolation. No matter how worried he was, he still couldn't prevent death from coming. The figure that fell at the end of the valley still hoped that someone would save him. He hoped that a miracle would happen. However, a miracle was still a miracle. It existed in legends, but it didn't exist in the real world. The corpse was corroded by the rain, and only a skull was left. It was white and dazzling. Hua Yang. When he saw the skull, Ning Chen's body trembled. A sense of being a cultivator of the sun scripture rose from the bottom of his heart. After 100 years, it was still unusually clear. With a wave of his hand, a green light flashed, and a jade pendant appeared. It was Hua Yang's relic that he found at the back of the 9th summit. Looking at the jade pendant in his hand, Ning Chen's eyes flashed. Thoughts kept running in his mind, and he could vaguely guess what had happened that year. Without a doubt, when Hua Yang was still in the 9th summit, he already knew that he was going to die, so he built a cenotaph for himself in advance. As for what happened after that, he still didn't know. However, he could guess that after that, Hua Yang must have fought with someone and was severely injured. When he escaped to this valley, he was already on the verge of death. These words were clearly written by Hua Yang when he was about to die. However, in the end, no one came to save him. From the words written in blood on the cliff, it could be seen how unwilling and helpless Hua Yang was at that time. The ties to his family made him unable to die in peace. 100 years had passed. Hua Yang's younger sister should have long since passed away, just like the truth that was buried before his eyes. It would be difficult to find her again. As the master of the 9th summit, I will let you rest in peace. 100 years ago, no one came to save you. 100 years later, I will bury your bones and send you to the Yellow Springs. Ning Chen bowed and stepped the skull into the ground at the bottom of the cliff. Then, Yellow soil sprinkled on top of the skull and buried it. The yellow soil covered the white bones. The former master of the ninth summit was finally buried after 100 years. Ning Chen stood up and was about to leave the valley when he suddenly stopped. A fierce glint appeared in his eyes. At the back of the ninth summit, Yin Er was running for her life. Her face was filled with panic. Behind her, the man chased after her step by step. He didn't seem to be fast, but he followed closely behind her. "You can't escape." As he spoke, a powerful palm energy roared out and landed on the girl's back. When the palm energy reached her, a red light rose. It lasted for a moment before it collapsed. Yin Er flew hundreds of feet away and crashed into a huge tree. She spat out a mouthful of blood and dyed the ground in front of her red. "You're just at the acquired stage, but you have such great power in your body. You really make me happy." The man walked forward and condensed his origin energy with a flip of his palm. Endless devouring power spread out and reached for the girl. At the moment of danger, the red sword in Yin Er's hand shone brightly and automatically protected its master. A stunning sword light cut through the night and collided with the man's palm. There was a loud explosion. The ninth summit shook violently. The red sword shattered and blocked the fatal palm. At the end of the valley in the Meson space, Ning Chen sensed the destruction of the red sword he personally made. His expression darkened. Without hesitation, he activated the yellow springs and his demonic aura surged into the sky. Chaos swallowed the heavens. Rivers, seas, mountains, and rivers could all refine one's body. However, everything had an end and a limit. The Meson space was the same. Ning Chen released the heavenly demonic power in his body. Demonic waves spread rapidly, trying to forcibly open this world. In the dense forest, the man's expression changed. His aura surged and his three souls gathered and entered his Meson space. In the endless demonic waves, the void swirled. The man walked out and looked at the demon in front of him. His eyes darkened. "You're a demon." "Yes, so what?" The demon opened his eyes. His violent aura surged. His cold and emotionless eyes were filled with darkness. Before he finished speaking, his figure disappeared. The red sword appeared and cut through the 9 heavens. It could kill a god with a single strike. The man flipped his palm and a vast amount of origin energy rose. He forcefully grabbed the red sword. "Stupid!" A mocking voice rang out. The red sword in the demon's hand smashed down and sent the man flying. The demon did not stop. He rushed forward again. His sword was like a falling mountain as it slashed at the man. As the sword approached, the chaotic evil image roared. An ancient primordial force spread out and collided with the heavenly demonic power. With a rumble, the aftermath surged. The demon grew 10 feet tall and suppressed the chaotic evil image. Half of the man's body was buried in the ground. The man's face was ferocious. He transformed into his original form and the chaotic evil image returned to its original position. The chaotic evil image appeared. A huge body like a small mountain rose up and shook the world. When the demon saw this, the red sword in his hand disappeared. He roared at the sky and his body changed rapidly. After obtaining Xian Luo's memories, he used the heavenly demonic divine power for the first time. The 300 feet tall demon stood upright and stepped on the chaotic evil image. "If you dare to hurt her, you'll have to pay with your life." The demon's foot stepped down and exploded. The ground within 1,000 miles collapsed. Huge cracks crisscrossed and reached the end of the Meson space. Under the demon's foot, the mountain-like chaotic evil image was buried in the ground. Blood flowed and dyed the ground red. Chapter 630. In the Meson space, the fierce beast and the demonic body fought. Chaos took form, and the heavenly demon appeared. With a stomp, Chaos was heavily injured. Blood flowed and dyed the ground red. The evil chaos roared and struggled. The 1,000-foot-tall demonic body was surrounded by black gas. It stepped on chaos with demonic runes on its face, exuding a terrifying demonic aura. The terrifying demonic body revealed its shocking abilities. Even gods and Buddhas could not shake it. Under the demonic body's feet, chaos roared again. Its body scattered and turned into mist, escaping from the ground. 1,000 feet away, the mist gathered. Chaos appeared, and a series of sharp and ear-piercing roars came from its mouth. The next moment, chaos opened its mouth, and a thick black light surged out, shaking the sky and the earth. The black light approached, but the demonic body did not dodge. Instead, it punched out and directly shattered the attack. At the moment when the attack was broken, the demonic body instantly stepped forward and punched chaos into the ground again. Blood sprayed out like rain, dyeing the sky and the dust red. It was so beautiful that it was intoxicating. Roars echoed between heaven and earth. Chaos struggled to get up, but it was directly stepped on by a large foot. Demonic aura spread, and its ability to turn into mist was immediately suppressed. "Spare me." The difference in strength was irreversible. Chaos panicked and finally gave in, begging for mercy. The demonic body acted as if it did not hear anything. It stomped harder, and a waterfall of blood sprayed out. It was as if it was just stepping on an ant. There was no change in its expression. "Don't kill me. I'm willing to serve you as my master. Please." Sensing the impending death, Hun Dun was terrified and wailed. Hearing this, the demonic body paused and said, "Bring in the little girl that you wanted to kill just now." Chaos quickly nodded and opened its mouth. The void in front of it shook violently, and the little girl's figure fell and landed on the ground. Her blood-stained clothes were torn into several pieces. The little girl's eyes were closed, and blood dripped from the corner of her mouth. She looked extremely miserable. Seeing Er's appearance, endless killing intent erupted from the demonic body's eyes. With a stomp, the ground within 1,000 miles collapsed. Ah! There was an earth-shattering scream. Blood spurted out hundreds of feet from chaos and flowed down the cracks in the ground. The sound of blood splashing could be heard clearly. "Don't kill me. I'm willing to do anything." It was pleading in panic and fear. Primal chaos kept pleading and begging to be spared. The demonic body coldly snorted. The demonic chi around its body gathered and it returned to its original form. Then, a vast amount of phoenix essence poured into the little girl's body to heal her injuries. Not long after, woke up. When she saw the familiar figure in front of her, the grievance, fear, and worry in her heart instantly erupted. She hugged the figure and started crying. "Where did you go? You promised not to leave me alone again." The little girl's body trembled as she cried. She had lost him once, so she was extremely afraid of being abandoned again. Ning Chen patted the little girl's back. After a long time, he softly said, "It's Master's fault. Don't cry. Master will give you something." "What is it?" Tired from crying, lifted her small face from the former's embrace, wiped her tears, and asked. "Follow me and you'll know." Ning Chen held the little girl's hand and walked towards primal chaos. Looking at the huge beast in front of him, he coldly said, "I'll give you a way out now. Serve her as your master and I'll spare your life. Otherwise, this will be your burial ground." Primal chaos glanced at the little girl, and a trace of unwillingness flashed in its eyes. It said, "I am primal chaos. How can I serve a mortal as my master?" It had lost to the person in front of it, but it was fine to serve her as its master. After all, this was a world where the strong ruled. It was acceptable to submit to the strong, but to make it bow in front of a mortal was a disgrace to its name as primal chaos. Hearing the former's answer, a trace of murderous intent flashed in Ning Chen's eyes. He said, "Then you choose to die. Demonic qi surged around Ning Chen, and a strong murderous intent surged. It was boundless and could drive people crazy. No, I'm willing to serve her as my master. Seeing the demonic body's murderous intent, primal chaos trembled. It did not dare to persist and compromised. Then give me your soul. Ning Chen said coldly. Then, he raised his hand and pressed it on primal chaos's huge head. A majestic demonic qi erupted and pulled out one of the latter's souls. With one of its souls taken, primal chaos roared in pain, and its body trembled violently. Ning Chen turned his palm and condensed yuan qi. The yellow spring seal trapped primal chaos soul, and then sent it into the little girl's Dantian sea of qi. I've sealed one of its souls in your body. If it tries to rebel against its master, destroy its soul immediately, Ning Chen said directly in front of primal chaos. Anger flashed in primal chaos' eyes, but it did not dare to say anything. Feeling the additional soul in her body, looked at the mountain-like monster in front of her curiously. She asked, "Why did you hit me just now?" "I didn't provoke you." Primal chaos was silent and did not answer. Ning Chen thought of the incident in the valley and said, "I have something to ask you. 100 years ago, were you the one who killed Huayang?" "No," primal chaos shook its head. "Then who did it?" Ning Chen continued to ask. "I don't know," primal chaos replied. Ning Chen narrowed his eyes, and said coldly. "I can't say," primal chaos body stiffened and changed its words. "Why can't I say?" Ning Chen asked coldly. "The power of the law. If I say anything, I'll die," primal chaos said truthfully. Ning Chen frowned and said, "How can there be such a law in this world?" Primal chaos was silent. After a while, it said, "This is not the law of heaven and earth, but the law of a true realm expert." "There are true realm experts in this world?" Ning Chen asked seriously. "Yes." Primal chaos nodded. Ning Chen fell into deep thought when he heard the former's reply. After a short moment, he raised his head and said indifferently, "Send us out. Remember, there's only a bitter battle between us that hasn't been decided. You haven't seen anything, understand?" "I understand," primal chaos replied sensibly. As soon as he finished speaking, the surrounding space shook. The three of them disappeared and returned to the outside world. Ning Chen held the little girl's hand and left. Primal chaos took human form and looked at the two of them in the distance. Its eyes were full of unwillingness, but it could no longer change this fact. An hour later, in the bamboo forest hut, Ning Chen picked a great medicine from the third peak. He used his true essence to dissolve the medicine and help the little girl's body recuperate. Sat on the bed and looked at the person in front of her with big eyes. She said, "Ning Chen, my sword is broken." Ning Chen sat quietly by the bed and fed the medicine into her mouth. When he heard the little girl's words, he said calmly, "If it's broken, it's broken. Just make another one." "Oh, replied. After thinking for a while, she said, "When you weren't here just now, that purple Marquis came again and fought with Master Amo." When Ning Chen heard this, his hand that was holding the spoon paused. He raised his head and asked, "He didn't die? What was the final result?" "I don't know. I went to the back of the mountain at that time and didn't see it," replied. Ning Chen nodded and didn't ask any more. He continued to feed the little girl the medicine. The fact that Purple Marquis didn't die in the Western immortal world was out of his expectations. However, Master Mo's strength was clearly much higher than the former. The result this time shouldn't be too different from 100 years ago. On Yu Peak, Master Mo closed his eyes and pondered. At this moment, the void swirled and a white gauze sedan appeared. Its powerful aura caused the surrounding space to violently tremble. Master Mo opened his eyes and looked at the figure in the sedan. He slowly said, "It's you. Long time no see, Master Mo. How have you been?" The woman in the sedan calmly said. Why have you come? Asked Master Amo. Hong Wan is about to get married. I've come to deliver an invitation to Master Amo. The woman waved her hand and a red streak of light flew towards the Dao stage. Master Amo received the invitation and indifferently said, it's enough to send someone. Why do you have to personally come? Master Mo's status is different from ordinary people. Only by personally coming can I show my sincerity, the woman softly replied. Master Amo was silent. After a moment, he said, I will be there on time. With Master Mo's words, I can rest assured. It's getting late, so I'll take my leave first. As soon as she finished speaking, the space around the sedan began to swirl once more. In an instant, the white sedan entered the void and disappeared. Master Amo looked at the space that had returned to normal. A trace of emotion flashed through his aged eyes. 800 years had passed in the blink of an eye, but she hadn't changed at all. On planet Hongwan, in the King domain guarded by various sects, there were majestic palaces standing tall. This ancient secret realm had existed for an unknown number of years. After experiencing the rise and fall of generations, it had been passed down to this day and was nearly immortal. The King domain was decorated with lanterns and colored banners. The day of Princess Hongwan's wedding was approaching. The entire secret realm was bustling with noise and excitement. The King domain's biggest wedding in 100 years was bustling. Hongyi stood in front of a quiet palace. Even though she had lost her memories, her nature of liking peace hadn't changed. Looking at the busy secret realm, the confusion in her eyes became clearer. What are you thinking about? Not far away, a woman wearing a long dress walked over. Her appearance was flawless and her temperament was extraordinary. She was like a person from a painting. Perhaps only words like captivating the birds and beasts and outshining the moon and flowers could be described. Nothing. The phoenix body came back to her senses. Looking at the woman in front of her, she asked, how many more days? What? Are you regretting it? Princess Hongwan didn't answer. The phoenix body remained silent and didn't answer. Princess Hongwan didn't continue to ask. Changing the topic, she said, I know you've always wanted to remember your past, but this matter can't be rushed. You have to take it step by step. There will be a day when you will remember your past. The phoenix body nodded. Thinking for a moment, she said calmly, there are many geniuses on planet Hongwan. Why did you choose me? Princess Hongwan sighed softly and said, actually, I'm also very curious. You've already lost your memories, but why can you still look at yourself and others so calmly? Being overly rational isn't a good thing. I'm used to it. The phoenix body replied. Princess Hongwan looked into the distance and said, I can give you the answer to your question. With my status, do you think that other than this word, there is anything else that can affect my decision? I don't know where love comes from, but I'm deeply in love. Ning Chen's eyes were filled with confusion. Princess Hongwan came back to her senses. Her body trembled. Looking at the young man beside her, her beautiful eyes flashed with surprise. Was he talking to her? Chapter 631. On the Red Luan planet, Princess Hongwan was getting married. The Red Luan King's domain, which had been quiet for many years, was no longer as low-key as before. In just a few days, they sent out nearly 100 invitations to various planets. In the King's domain, as the day of the wedding approached, it gradually became lively. Young men and women came and went, making the final preparations for the princess wedding. Many guests had already arrived in advance. Wild beasts pulled carriages loaded with rare treasures as gifts. In front of a quiet palace, the phoenix body became more and more silent. He didn't care about what was happening outside. Ever since he returned from the Western Celestial Domain, he hadn't walked out of his palace for several months. Princess Hong Wan came several times, and each time she left, there was a strange expression between her brows. The red Luan mind-bewitching technique had never failed in its inheritance. Those who were bewitched couldn't break free for their entire lives. Even ascending immortals were the same. However, she clearly saw something in his eyes that shouldn't be there. Was it because of his rationality that he began to doubt himself? The red Luan mind-bewitching technique bestowed love, resentment, affection, and hatred. Although they were only illusory emotions, they were incomparably close to reality. It was hard to believe that a person would doubt his own emotions. This was the first time she had seen such a monster. In front of the palace, Hong Luan stood quietly. With a faintly discernible phoenix cry, the phoenix manifested. A crystal coffin made of ice flew out and landed in front of her. The woman in the coffin wore a red wedding dress that was as bright as blood. Her charming face was too perfect. She didn't look like a mortal. She had feelings and willingly fell into the abyss. Looking at the woman in the coffin, guilt and sadness rose in the phoenix body's eyes. The unforgettable pain didn't change even after losing her memories. Mo Planet, EU Peak. Mo Clan's 5 sons soon appeared from their peaks and respectfully stood in front of the platform. Princess Hong Luan's wedding. I've specially sent someone to deliver an invitation. I've already prepared a generous gift. Which one of you will go? Mo Clan looked at the 5 sons and said. I'll go. Chi Huan walked out and answered. Mo Clan nodded and waved his hand to send out a brocade box. The gift is in the box. Remember to personally hand it to the Red Luan Realm's king. Also, according to rumors, her husband once obtained the inheritance of the phoenix. When you go, make a trip to the Fire Nation and ask for 10 fire essences in my name. Yes. Chi Huan took the box and said respectfully. Below the platform, Ning Chen's body trembled slightly when he heard the word phoenix. He immediately took half a step forward and said, Master, can you allow disciple to go with 5th senior brother? Oh. Why? A wisp of doubt flashed through Master Mo's brows as he asked. Princess Hong Luan's prince consort might be an old friend that disciple has been looking for a long time, Ning Chen replied. Mo Zhu thought for a moment before nodding. Since that's the case, you can go with old 5th. Many thanks, Master, Ning Chen said respectfully. The 2 of you should go and prepare. Old 6, Old 7, and Old 8, you 3 stay behind, said Mo Zhu calmly. Yes. The 2 of them bowed in unison before turning around and leaving. Outside the Legacy Peak, Chi Huan looked at the young man beside him and said, 9th junior brother, I'll be waiting for you at the 5th peak. We'll leave immediately once you're ready. Yes. Ning Chen nodded and charged towards the 9th summit. In the bamboo house in front of the forest on the 9th summit, Yin was sitting at the door in a daze. As she had just recovered from her serious injuries, her body was still a little weak, so she did not practice her sword. Ning Chen walked over and looked at the little girl in front of the bamboo house. Yin get ready. We're going out. Yin came back to her senses and asked in confusion, where are we going? Planet Hong Luan, to search for the phoenix body, Ning Chen replied. Hearing this, Yin immediately stood up and said, I'll go and pack now. After saying that, the little girl turned around and ran into the house to pack her bottles and jars. Not long after, a big bag of things was packed. Yin carried the big bag and walked forward. Help me carry it. Ning Chen nodded and waved his hand to send the bag into the mess in space. Are we the only ones going? Yin asked. Chi Huan is coming too, Ning Chen replied softly. What about Sister Ling Luo? Yin continued to ask. She's not going. Moreover, Master Mo has asked the other 3 to stay behind. There might be other matters, Ning Chen replied. Oh. Yin replied. It was a pity. If only Sister Ling Luo was going with them. After packing up, the two of them didn't delay any longer and walked towards the fifth peak. On the fifth peak, Qi Huan saw the two of them walk over. His figure flashed and he appeared in front of them. "Senior apprentice brother," said Ning Chen. "Let's go to the Fire Nation first." Qi Huan nodded. N. Ning Chen gently nodded and followed along with Yin. Several thousand miles north of Mount Mo was the Fire Nation. It was one of Mo planet's most ancient inheritances. It had a long history that even surpassed Mo Gate. However, Master Mo's cultivation was the strongest in Mo planet. No matter how long the Fire Nation's history was, they had no choice but to submit. The Fire Nation's territory couldn't be considered large. It was different from a country in the traditional sense. It was more like a pure land. There were martial artists everywhere, and Xiantian experts weren't rare. The three of them arrived at the Fire Nation and directly walked towards Yen City where the Fire Nation's master resided. Ninth Junior Apprentice brother, once you reach Yen City, you must not act blindly without thinking. The Fire Nation's master is not someone easy to deal with. Even with master's face, asking for the flame essence won't go too smoothly, reminded Qi Huan. Ning Chen nodded, a strange light flashing in his eyes. It seemed that Master Mo's request for the flame essence was only an excuse. His true goal was likely not here. At the center of the Fire Nation, Yen City was a lone city in a wasteland. Earth veins crisscrossed the surroundings, and the flow of earth fire was clearly visible. Within several hundred miles, the fire essence was extremely rich. Even before entering the city, they could feel the heat waves blowing against their faces. It was rumored that the majority of the Fire Nation's citizens cultivated martial arts, and their physiques were also different from ordinary people's. They were able to endure the extremely hot weather that ordinary people found difficult to endure. As soon as the three of them entered the city, they immediately attracted the attention of quite a few people. They cautiously observed their movements. Ning Chen sensed the gazes of those people, but he didn't care. They weren't planning on hiding their identities, so whether or not others recognized them wasn't important. If he hadn't guessed wrong, Master Mo's goal was likely to be to test whether or not the Fire Nation's master had any thoughts of betrayal. He had heard that flame essences were born in the flame domain, and the process of condensing them was extremely slow. Even the Fire Nation couldn't have too many of them. If Master Mo asked for 10 at once, then as long as he had the slightest bit of disloyalty, he wouldn't easily agree. Fifth Senior Apprentice brother, if you fought with the Fire Nation's master, who would have a higher chance of winning? Ning Chen asked the person beside him. The Fire Nation's imperial palace was already within reach. Master Mo, Qi Huan honestly said, the Fire Nation's master stepped into the immortal realm 100 years before me. His cultivation is unfathomably deep. Even if he hasn't stepped into the corporeal realm, my chances of winning are less than 30%. Fifth Senior Apprentice brother, have you ever thought about how we'd deal with the Fire Nation's master if he decided to make trouble for us? Ning Chen continued asking. That shouldn't be the case. The Fire Nation's master has always been somewhat afraid of Honorable Master. Unless it's absolutely necessary, it's unlikely that he would completely tear apart all decorum with Mo Gate, replied Qi Huan. Just as the two of them arrived at Yen City, 1,000 miles to the west of the Fire Nation was Mo City. Within a quiet mansion, a green-robed woman was focused on crushing medicine. Her face was covered in sweat, and she looked just like an ordinary Yao family girl. Not long after, a man walked in from outside the courtyard. Seeing the woman still crushing medicine, he said, just now, the Fire Nation's master sent word that Qi Huan and the Ninth Peak's new disciple have already arrived at Yen City. They must have received orders from that old fellow. So what? The green-robed woman didn't even raise her head. She continued crushing medicine as she indifferently replied. Aren't you curious as to why Qi Huan and the others are going to Yen City? Asked the man curiously. Probing. The green-robed woman replied. Probing what? The man frowned. The Fire Nation's loyalty and stance. The green-robed woman stood up and placed the medicine she had just crushed to the side. Then she picked up some other herbs and continued crushing them. Are you saying that that old fellow is already prepared to take action against the Fire Nation's master? Asked the man. Whether it's true or not, we'll know once we continue watching. The Fire Nation's master has received too much help from us these past few years, and his wings have gradually grown. How could that old fellow not be suspicious? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. With the Fire Nation causing trouble for him, we can better hide our identities. It's worth it, said the man. While the two of them were talking, a purple-robed figure appeared at the entrance of the courtyard. When he saw the two of them, he respectfully bowed. Looks like your injuries have pretty much healed. Next time, don't be so impulsive as to seek death. Right now, you're still far from being that old fellow's match. It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. You've already endured for 100 years. Is it really that difficult to endure for a few more years? The green-robed woman raised her head and glanced at him. Purple Marquis was silent. He didn't dare to refute her. Come and dry these herbs in a cool place, said the green-robed woman. Yes. Purple Marquis nodded and walked forward to help her. His usually domineering personality was restrained at this moment. He didn't dare to say anything. There might be some trouble with the Fire Nation's master in the next few days. Make a trip there. Remember, don't hurt anyone, said the green-robed woman. Yes, replied Purple Marquis once again. It's a bit inappropriate. This time, if that old fellow personally takes action, the chances of ZE going will be very low, said the man worriedly. He hasn't left the leaving message peak for several hundred years. This time should be the same. If it's only a clone, then there's nothing to worry about, said the green-robed woman calmly. I'll leave as soon as possible, said Purple Marquis. There's no need to rush. The Fire Nation's master can handle Qi Huan alone. What you need to deal with are the other three people, especially that Ling Luozhen. She's at the late stage of extreme yin. Once she goes crazy, even you won't be able to handle her, reminded the green-robed woman. Can't I kill her? Asked Purple Marquis after a moment of silence. No, said the green-robed woman. She's already at the peak of the emptiness realm. Her chances of surviving are low. Dying by my hands might be a better result, said Purple Marquis. Zichuan, don't think that you can forget everything just because you changed your name. That's your junior sister. This matter will never change. Her life and death isn't up to you to decide. Don't make me look down on you, said the green-robed woman coldly. Purple Marquis once again became silent. He didn't dare to say anything else. Chapter 632. In Yen City, the three of them walked towards the Fire Nation's imperial palace without saying a word. The imperial palace in front of them did not look majestic, nor did it have the splendor of an imperial dynasty in the mortal world. The ancient building was filled with the aura of time, and from afar, one could feel an extraordinary pressure. The Fire Nation worshipped martial arts and had many strong cultivators. The Fire Nation's ruler was a treading celestial, and his cultivation was unfathomable. Some people said that the current Fire Nation's ruler was the strongest person under the Mo Nation's ruler. Although it was a bit exaggerated, it was enough to show how powerful the ruler of the Fire Nation was. The fire essence that the three of them wanted to obtain was born in the Fire Nation's fire domain. Only the Fire Nation's ruler knew how to enter the fire domain. Therefore, if they wanted to obtain the fire essence, they first had to face the strongest cultivator in the Fire Nation's imperial palace. In front of the imperial palace, there were not many guards, and it was not as strict as the imperial dynasty in the mortal world. However, even so, no one dared to enter without permission. After all, no one wanted to offend a treading celestial. Out of politeness, Qi Huan and Ning Chen reported their identities and waited quietly outside the imperial palace. After waiting for a long time, the guard who went to report finally came back and brought the three of them in. Ning Chen held Er's hand and followed behind Qi Huan. Looking at the layout of the surroundings, his eyes narrowed. They could not see clearly from the outside, but after entering, they could feel that this imperial palace was not ordinary. Although it did not look like an imperial dynasty in the mortal world, the layout of the palaces was full of surprises. It could be imagined that the person who was in charge of building this imperial palace had an excellent understanding of arrays. "We've arrived. Please, my king is waiting inside." In front of the imperial palace, the guard stopped and said respectfully. Qi Huan nodded and thanked him. He looked at the palace in front of him and reminded him, "Ninth junior brother, be careful later." Ning Chen calmly agreed and walked forward with him. The three of them entered the palace. In the main hall, a middle-aged man with a dignified appearance was sitting quietly. He was wearing a red imperial robe, and there was hot air swirling around him, making it difficult for people to get close. Junior Qi Huan greets the Fire Nation's ruler. Qi Huan stepped forward and bowed politely. On his seat, the Fire Nation's ruler looked down at the people below without saying a word. His cold eyes were filled with disdain. Qi Huan was mentally prepared, so his complexion was as calm as ever. He didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. "Ninth junior apprentice brother and I have come under the orders of our honorable master to ask for 10 flame essences. We hope that Fire Lord can grant us this." "Mo master, ha." The Fire Master coldly smiled and said, "Do you know how important a flame essence is to my Fire Nation? How could we give it away just because of a few words from you?" "Fire Master, you can state your conditions," Qi Huan said indifferently. "There is no need. It is absolutely impossible for me to give away the flame essence. Please return." The Fire Lord's tone was unyielding. "Can't we discuss it?" Qi Huan narrowed his eyes. "No," said the Fire Master coldly. "That's a pity." Qi Huan flipped his left hand and green beads flew out, turning into a wheel that spun around him. An icy cold aura circulated, and the temperature in the hall suddenly dropped. Snowflakes condensed and fell from the sky. "I have a whole new level of respect for your courage to cause trouble in the royal palace." Seeing this, the Fire Master stood up. Immediately, waves of heat surged through the hall and flames began to burn. Outside the palace, when they saw that the Fire Master had made his move, many figures walked out of thin air and appeared to protect him. "Ninth junior apprentice brother, stop them," said Qi Huan. "Yes." Ning Chen nodded and walked to the entrance of the hall. He waved his right hand, and Taisher appeared. With a single sword in hand, he dared to block 10,000 men. Stood behind him, her hands tugging on his sleeves. She was more excited than nervous. In the same hall, there were 2 battlefields. Mo Gates twins were joining hands to resist the Fire Nation's power. The battle was about to begin, and the heavy atmosphere continued to spread. The 13 figures that had come to protect the Fire Emperor all pulled out their blades. Their figures flashed, and they began the battle at an extremely fast speed. With a clanging sound, the blades collided, and the shockwaves surged out. One blade passed, followed by another. There was a tacit understanding between attack and defense, and there were no openings. In the intertwining battle, the 3 Perfection Realm leaders' blades danced like the autumn rain. It was continuous and unending, causing people to sigh in admiration. When Mo Gates twins attacked, the 13 Imperial Guards revealed their abilities, stunning the world. However, the black-robed figure in front of them was as unmoving as a mountain. Taisher's sword swept, swung, chopped, and stabbed. The simplest moves blocked the 13 Imperial Guards' attacks. In the blink of an eye, they had exchanged more than 10 moves. The 13 Imperial Guards who seemed to have the upper hand were unable to take a single step forward. 3 feet in front of the black-robed figure was a forbidden area. Inside the hall, the Fire Master saw that the two of them were extraordinary. He took a step forward, and his palm split open the wind and clouds. The Fire Master attacked, and Qi Huan moved as well. A vast and boundless palm met the attack. The two palms collided, and the wind and clouds went berserk. Ice and fire clashed violently, and the world constantly changed color. The battle between the two ascending immortals immediately turned into a blazing white. Furious waves surged endlessly. For a moment, the entire palace was filled with light. Strange runes appeared one after another, and the power of a powerful formation constantly absorbed the spiritual qi of the world. It actually forcefully protected the palace in the battle. The moment the formation was activated, Ning Chen and Qi Huan both felt their bodies sink. An indescribable pressure came from all directions, and their bodies were immediately suppressed by 30%. Qi Huan frowned. The green frost pearls around him spun rapidly, turning into streams of light that crashed into the person in front of him. The Fire Master did not dare to be careless. He turned his palm to gather fire essence and blocked the spiritual pearls with all his might. With a violent tremor, the green frost pearls broke through the fire essence. The strange spiritual pearls were not affected by the palm power, and they crashed into the former's chest. With a groan, the Fire Master retreated several steps. He was the first to be injured. Not bad. The Fire Master shouted as he lost the battle. Streams of light danced around his body, and a fiery red halberd descended from the sky. Endless fire essence roared violently. With a flash of brilliance, the flaming halberd slashed down, and a powerful flame aura erupted. Qi Huan focused. The moment his palm moved, the green frost pearls coiled up. Cold air surged, and it met the flaming halberd head-on. With an earth-shattering tremor, the remaining shockwaves swept out in all directions. The green frost pearls were not affected by the fire essence, and they broke through the attack again. At the last moment, they were blocked by the flaming halberd, and they could not advance any further. So, this treasure can only break through true origin. The Fire Master sneered. True origin gathered in his arms, and the flaming halberd slashed down, and the spiritual pearls were knocked away. With the remaining shockwaves, Qi Huan retreated 3 steps. The 9 green frost pearls returned to him, spinning around him. In Yen City, I am the absolute ruler. Your struggles are foolish. As soon as he finished speaking, the Fire Master's halberd slammed into the ground, and his aura continued to rise. In an instant, fire essence rapidly gathered from all directions. Below Yen City, the earth fire spiritual veins shook, and fire essence broke through the ground, flowing towards the Yen City palace. The shocking scene shocked everyone. With the advantage of the terrain, the Fire Master's cultivation rose rapidly. In a short moment, he broke through the limits of the emptiness realm and stepped into the second stage of the treading immortal realm. Feeling the change behind him, Ning Chen's eyes narrowed. He pushed back the 13 experts in front of him, and his figure flashed, and the tip of his sword pierced through the air. Impudent! The Fire Master opened his eyes, and a furious current surged, blocking the deadly sword light. Then, he turned his palm and condensed vast origin energy, slamming it towards the former. When the palm origin energy arrived, the black-robed man moved again. With an extremely fast movement technique and an extremely fast sword, he avoided the palm energy and once again stabbed towards the former's vital points. The Fire Master leaned to the side, dodging the sword light. He raised his halberd, and a whirlwind broke through the air. The halberd's might shook the heavens and the earth. The black-robed man's expression didn't change. He turned around, and his body moved with the halberd. The Fire Master focused, and the true origin energy around his body rippled. He used his cultivation to suppress the speed of the person in front of him. In the first exchange between the sword and halberd, Ning Chen immediately retreated. His sword's momentum was much faster, and he used his extreme speed to forcefully block the former's moves. In the blink of an eye, the battle of speed and strength had already gone through several exchanges. The Fire Master was shocked and even more impressed. The person in front of him was only a half venerable, and yet he could exchange so many moves with him. It was truly unexpected. Extraordinary swordsman, I admire you. After a long exchange, the situation reached a stalemate. The Fire Master stopped his halberd and reached out to grab the tip of the sword. With a clang, Taisher was restrained and couldn't move at all. A cold glint flashed through Ning Chen's eyes. He flipped his palm and shook out of the battle. Then, he clenched his left hand, and a white rainbow appeared. The sword, which was as thin as a cicada's wing, was forced out again. It was awe-inspiring, and a cold light flashed in all directions. The Fire Master flipped his palm and blocked the sword again. However, the sword twisted, bypassing the former's palm, and continued forward. Back off. The Fire Master's face was filled with anger. His true origin surged and gathered the power of the earth fire in a radius of several hundred miles. Suddenly, an abnormally strong fire origin energy exploded, shaking the battle. Not far away, Qi Huan, who was blocking the guards, waved his hand to dissolve the aftershock. 9 green frost jades flew out and blocked the spreading fire origin energy. Qi Huan rushed to the former's side and asked, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." Ning Chen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Light flashed through his deep eyes. It was too difficult for him to fight against a corporeal realm expert with his current strength. "You've done very well. Unfortunately, you've chosen the wrong master. You can talk about your friendship in the underworld." As the Fire Master spoke, he opened and closed his hands. Amidst the raging waves, the entire palace shook. Rays of red light flowed into the king's hall, increasing its power. "Be careful." Qi Huan's expression turned serious when he saw this. "Okay." Ning Chen nodded. His figure flashed, and he appeared in front of her, pulling her behind him. Just as the power was about to fall, the void in the hall swirled. A white-robed figure walked out. His old face was filled with the vicissitudes of time. "Fire Master, I haven't seen you for many years. Your temper is still so bad. It's just a few fire essences. Why do you have to make things difficult for 2 juniors?" Mo Master walked out and raised his hand, calming the wind and clouds. At the same time, in Golden Dawn City, in the Xiaoya Chang and restaurant, the owner of the Xiaoya Tower put down the scissors after trimming the last pot of flowers and walked downstairs. "Tower Master." Seeing the person who came, the shopkeeper bowed respectfully. "Okay." Mo Xiaowai nodded and calmly said, "I've been away for a few days. Before I return, the Xiaoya Chang and restaurant will be temporarily closed." Hearing this, the shopkeeper trembled and said, "Tower Master, how can we close such a big restaurant just like that? There are still guests staying in the guest rooms. Is this something I should consider?" Mo Xiaowai said indifferently. Soon after, he looked at the high platform and said, "Hong Wan, let's go." "Yes." On the high platform, Hong Wan stopped playing the zither. She stood up and bowed before walking down the high platform. Chapter 633. In the Fire Nation's Imperial Palace, Missouri Zhu appeared and pointed at the sky. Seeing the former, Mo Zhu's face turned cold. "You really came. It's been a long time." "I have to come and see an old friend," Mo Zhu said slowly. "Do we have such a relationship?" Mo Zhu shouted and clenched his hand. His halberd absorbed the power of the 8 desolates. Vigorous fire elemental energy roared crazily with shocking power. Mo Zhu raised his right hand and 7-colored brilliance gathered, illuminating the void. With a bang, the 2 experts clashed for the first time. boundless turbulence violently shook the entire palace. Strange light shone brightly as the aftermath of the battle scattered between heaven and earth. 7 Rainbow Burial Sun. The immortal technique appeared again, and the divine sun appeared. Its shocking power drowned the Fire Nation's master in front of it. Ha! Mo Zhu shouted angrily. Turbulence spun rapidly in all directions, and a huge vortex revolved around him. Then, he slashed down with his halberd to meet the immortal technique head-on. The two techniques collided, and the earth trembled. The aftermath of the battle between the two experts in the immortal realm was endless, constantly shaking the imperial palace. Not far away, Ning Chen was quietly watching the battle while protecting Yin Er. He wanted to experience the power of the second stage of the immortal realm. He had a great enemy who was not weaker than a corporeal expert. Moreover, he could appear at any time. Therefore, he had to understand the battle methods of experts at this level. This person was Xian Luo, a true demon among demons. Xian Luo's strength after breaking the seal should be slightly weaker than Mo Zhu. However, the seal in the demonic Will Ocean Palace for many years had greatly damaged Xian Luo's vitality. Coupled with the loss of half of his body, he was no longer at his peak. Based on this, it was very likely that Xian Luo at his peak was at the peak of the corporeal realm, or even comparable to a true realm expert. Big trouble. Ning Chen's eyes flashed. He hoped that Xian Luo's injuries would take more time to recover. In addition, after dealing with the matter of the phoenix body, he had to quickly start cultivating the Celestial Devil Clan's ability that he obtained from Xian Luo. Otherwise, his chances of winning the next time they met would still be slim. Xian Luo could find him through the power's senses. This was his greatest disadvantage. It meant that no matter where he went, Xian Luo could find him. While he was lost in thought, the battle between the two powerhouses in the Great Hall became increasingly intense. Although Mo Zhu came here in his incarnation, his combat strength was still terrifying. Every move he made could shake the wind and clouds. On the other hand, the Fire Master was supported by the power of Yen City's earth veins. He stood in the corporeal realm and had an endless supply of energy. He was actually on par with the Ink Master and was not at a disadvantage. With a loud bang, Mo Zhu lifted his hand to meet the halberd head-on. In the aftermath, boundless fist strength smashed into his body. For the first time, Mo Zhu's lips turned red. "Have you calmed down?" Mo Zhu said calmly as he flipped his palm, shaking off the battle. "Not yet." The Fire Master shouted coldly. The flame halberd danced with the fire elemental energy, and the fire dragon of the 8 wastelands appeared. Its roar shook the heavens as it rushed towards the former. Immortal technique, waning waxing moons. Mo Zhu raised his hand, and the power of extreme yin and extreme yang spread out. A yin moon appeared, and as the black and white intertwined, a world-shaking might that surpassed the natural order appeared again. Rumbling sounds rang out as the 8 Desolation Flame Dragon collided with the yin moon immortal technique. A terrifying explosion rang out, and the formation flickered. Outside King's City, 10,000 li of sand flew into the 9 heavens. Tick-tock, a light sound rang out. In the battle, blood trickled down from the corners of the Fire Lord's mouth. He was injured for the first time. "Fire Lord, you're in a sorry state." At this moment, outside the main hall, a purple-robed figure suddenly appeared. The Sword Dominator had reappeared in the world. Purple Marquis. Qi Huan squinted his eyes and looked at the man who appeared in the battle with a serious expression. "Old 8. Mo Zhu said. "Yes." As soon as he finished speaking, silver light gathered, and a silver-robed and silver-haired figure walked out, blocking in front of Purple Marquis. Ling Luozhen. Seeing the woman blocking in front of him, Purple Marquis's eyes flashed with a strange light. "You can't enter this hall." Ling Luozhen blocked in front of the king's hall and separated the battle. "Then let's see if you have the ability to stop me." As soon as he finished speaking, a sword light flashed, and the domineering sword cut through the void, pressing forward. Ling Luozhen flipped her palm to block the sword, and the ground around her trembled violently. Your reaction is not bad, but it's still too weak. Purple Marquis condensed his yuan energy into his sword. His sword was swift and sharp, and its sharpness was unstoppable. It destroyed everything before his eyes. Ling Luozhen's body moved, and her yin energy converged, causing undercurrents to surge and collide with the sword light. The battle on the other side instantly became white-hot. Sword and palm collided, and killing intent filled the air. Inside and outside the king's hall, there were two battles. For ascending immortals attacked, and their might was shocking. Loud explosions resounded over 100 miles. On the other side, Qi Huan blocked the reinforcements of the 13 guards. The 9 azure frost pearls suppressed everyone. In the main hall, Ning Chen became the only person who didn't attack. He was seriously watching the battle. Mo Gate had come prepared, and the situation was clearly leaning towards Mo Gate. The decisive advantage of their strength made this battle disadvantageous for the Fire Nation from the start. Ninth brother, the Flame Realm is 300 miles to the east of this city. I'll tell you how to enter in a bit. Right now, you should immediately go there and retrieve the flame essence. Mo's sovereign sent the Flame Nation's ruler flying with a flip of his palm. Yes. Ning Chen nodded. Holding Yin Er's hand, he turned into a streak of light and shot towards the east. Seeing someone leave, the Fire Nation's expression immediately sank. He wanted to stop them with his halberd. However, Mo Zhu also moved. 7 colored streaks of light crisscrossed, blocking the path ahead. 700 miles to the east of Yen City, there was an endless mountain range. A black-clothed figure appeared and quickly rushed towards it. Ning Chen quickly found the location of the fire region. He clenched his left hand, and a white streak of light appeared. His 2 swords spun, and an extreme sun rose, slashing towards the void in front of him. Heaven and earth violently shook, and the illusion collapsed. The scene in front of him changed, and an unfamiliar world appeared before him. Large cracks appeared in the world where flames soared. Earth fire spewed out, reaching dozens of feet high. It was a shocking sight. Formation patterns flickered around the earth fire, concealing its aura. From the outside, there was only a mountain range that stretched for 1,000 miles. Ning Chen stepped in and immediately felt the surrounding temperature rise. The powerful pressure was even stronger than when he was in the Feng Shui Forbidden Land. 100 miles away, in a huge mountain pass, the waves of fire had reached their peak. The extremely high temperature caused the world to distort, and no one dared to take half a step closer. Ning Chen held Yin Er's hand and jumped into the mountain. His phoenix essence rose, blocking the surging waves of fire. It's so hot here. Yin Er wiped the sweat from her brow and said softly. Ning Chen's aura weakened, and he used all his strength to protect the little girl. He said softly, bear with it. We'll be out soon. Lava spewed out from the ground in front of him. A huge stone platform stood in the lava. There were about 20 to 30 red crystals floating up and down. The majestic fire essence overflowed, and it was exceptionally beautiful. Ning Chen's figure flashed and landed on the stone platform. With a wave of his hand, he collected 10 fire essences. Take all of them. Yin raised her head and suggested. There's no need. Ning Chen shook his head. Master Mo knows the method to enter this place, so he should also know how many fire essences there are. Since he said he would take 10, then take 10. There's no need to lose a lot for a small gain and make him wary. Oh, Yin softly replied. She reluctantly glanced at the remaining dozen fire essences. There were treasures here, but she couldn't take them. How annoying. Let's go back. The matter of the phoenix body is more important. If there's a chance, we can come back and take it. Seeing the reluctance in the little girl's eyes, Ning Chen spoke softly and was about to leave. But at this moment, Ning Chen suddenly paused. He looked down at the earth fire, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Under the earth fire, their eyes were similar yet cold. It was like a mirror image reflected in the eyes of the two people looking at each other. Vermilion bird. Ning Chen coldly spat out 2 words. Before he had even finished speaking, the earth fire surged and a red-robed figure flew out. A similar appearance, a similar aura. Since ancient times, these 2 gods of fire had been destined to be incompatible. But now, they had met once more. "Phoenix, we meet again," the vermilion bird lightly said. Ning Chen waved his hand, and Genesis Supreme appeared once more. Looking at the person in front of him, he didn't conceal his killing intent. "It seems that we can only meet on the battlefield." The vermilion bird clenched her right hand. Amidst the flowing lights, red feathers gathered and formed a scarlet divine weapon. It was cold and red as it spun continuously. Just as the 2 of them were about to fight again, an old voice rang out, entering Ning Chen's ears. "Old Ninth, come back immediately after you take the fire essences." Hearing Master Mo's urging, Ning Chen frowned. He waved his hand, put away his sword, and flew toward the exit. In an instant, the black-robed figure left the fire region and disappeared. Looking at the former's figure, the vermilion bird's sword scattered and its eyes narrowed. This generation's phoenix had lost too much of its inheritance and was unable to use its innate abilities. This was the best opportunity for it to devour its body and restore its ancestors' might. Within the Fire Nation's royal palace, the battle between the 2 sides was still ongoing. Master Mo was suppressing the Fire Nation's master. The might of his immortal arts was difficult to block, and each move brought unparalleled pressure to the Fire Nation's master. Outside the palace, Ling Luo was blocking Purple Marquis with her true strength. Her pressure had far surpassed that of an ordinary Void Realm expert and was infinitely close to the corporeal realm. With the support of her extreme Yin energy, the master of Mo clan's 8th peak displayed an astonishing ability, forcibly blocking the late corporeal realm Purple Marquis. Ning Chen had just returned and was about to enter the battle when he was stopped by an old voice. "Old Ninth, Old Fifth, there's no need for the 2 of you to worry about this matter. You should leave," said Master Mo calmly. Hearing this, Qi Huan sighed in his heart. He withdrew from the battle and walked out of the hall. "Ninth junior brother, let's go," said Qi Huan. Ning Chen frowned, but he didn't ask any questions. He suppressed the fluctuations in his heart and followed. As soon as the 2 of them left, space stirred and 2 more figures appeared. Without saying a word, they entered the battle. Outside Yen City, Ning Chen turned around to look behind him as a serious look flashed across his eyes. Just now, Ling Luo's condition had been very strange. With her strength, she shouldn't have been able to block Purple Marquis. "Ninth junior brother, don't think too much and ask too many questions. Focus on your work," reminded Qi Huan. Ning Chen returned to his senses and nodded once more before leaving with Qi Huan. Once the 2 of them were far away, an incomparably vigorous energy erupted from Yen City's royal palace, causing the entire palace to collapse. 7-colored light illuminated the world, engulfing everything within. Chapter 634. The Red Luan Star was an ancient star that had been passed down for countless years. It was famous in the 3 ancient eras, and it had reached its peak. However, after the collapse of the Western celestial world, the Red Luan Star also gradually declined. In ancient times, it was rumored that the Queen Mother of the West, who was the ruler of the Western celestial world, came from the Red Luan Star. Although it had been a long time, and no one knew whether the rumors were true or false, the Red Luan Star was indeed powerful. On the Red Luan Star, there were nearly 100 dynasties, and countless aristocratic families and sections. Among the ancient ruins, one could still vaguely see some of the past glory. Among the sects, there were many large cities that crisscrossed with formations. The king's domain was located in one of the cities. Looking from the outside, there was only a hazy sea of fog. The Red Luan king's domain had been the absolute ruler of the Red Luan star since the three ancient eras. They looked down on all sects, and few sects dared to challenge them. This was a true colossus, and its inheritance was frighteningly long. No one knew how many terrifying things were hidden under this seemingly peaceful inheritance. Over the past few months, the news of Princess Red Luan's wedding spread everywhere, and it became the most eye-catching event in the entire Red Luan king's domain. Many Luan carriages flew across the sky to congratulate the king's domain. In the fog, the king's domain appeared. In the deepest part of the fairyland where birds sang and flowers bloomed, there were many ancient palaces. They were majestic and magnificent, even surpassing the imperial court of the mortal world. In the sky above the king's domain, the void rolled, and a sedan covered by a white curtain appeared. When the patrolling guards saw it, they all knelt down and saluted. "Greetings, princess. Rise." In the sedan, a pleasant voice sounded. There was a trace of charm in the elegance, which made people feel weak all over. Hearing this familiar voice, the guards lowered their heads even more. They were afraid that if they did not pay attention, they would lose their composure in front of this charming princess. "Where is the princess?" In the sedan, the woman asked. "She is with the prince consort," a guard replied respectfully. "Tell her to come to the drizzle pavilion to see me." After that, the sedan drove out and flew toward the palace in the west. In front of the flowing wind palace, Hongyi stood quietly. Beside her, Princess Red Luan, who was wearing a long dress, accompanied her. Hong Yi was very quiet and didn't speak much. In her calm eyes, traces of confusion became clearer and clearer, causing Princess Hong Luan to be even more worried. Princess Consort is back. She wants you to go to Drizzle Pavilion to see her." At this moment, a guard ran over from afar and knelt down to salute. "I know. You can leave first," Princess Hong Luan said calmly. "Yes." The guard accepted the order and got up to leave. Princess Hong Luan glanced at the man beside her as she softly said, "I'll be leaving first." Hong Yi nodded and calmly agreed. Princess Hong Luan left. Her beautiful face was filled with worry as she walked towards the princess consort's palace. The Drizzle Pavilion was surrounded by mist and mist. In front of the pavilion was a dark blue lake that rippled under the water. The scenery was exceptionally beautiful. In front of the lake, a woman with a white veil over her face stood quietly. Her aura was restrained and powerful. The closer one got to her, the more one could feel the nobility that could not be blasphemed. "Mistress." Princess Hong Luan walked over and respectfully bowed. The woman turned around and looked at the person in front of her. She calmly said, "Hong Luan, how are things going?" Princess Hong Luan lightly shook her head and said, "Recently, his gaze has become more and more strange. When he looks at me, the emotions in his eyes are also fading. The mind-bewitching technique is likely to lose its effect." Hearing this, the woman frowned and said, "Hong Luan's mind-bewitching technique has never been an exception. How can this be? I also don't know. There was nothing abnormal before, but after returning from the Western immortal world, this situation has become more and more serious," Princess Hong Luan replied. The woman narrowed her eyes and said, "Did you meet someone in the Western immortal world? Or did you coincidentally meet an old friend of his and stimulate him to remember something?" Princess Hong Luan thought for a moment and shook her head. "Probably not. In the Western immortal world, other than Gue Nu and a few disciples of Mahist sect, he didn't have any contact with anyone else." The woman frowned again and said, "Go and call him over. I'll help you test him. If he really remembers something, we can only use the mind-bewitching technique again." Princess Hong Luan heard this and a trace of hesitation flashed across her beautiful face. She softly said, "Using the mind-bewitching technique on the same person twice will greatly affect his mind. I don't want to hurt him. The woman's eyes turned cold and said, Hung Wan, I asked you to use the mind-bewitching technique on him to make him fall in love with you, not to trap you. I don't want to hear what you said a second time. Hung Wan knows her mistake. Princess Hung Wan lowered her head and replied. Go. The woman's expression eased and said. Princess Hung Wan sighed in her heart and turned to leave. Less than an hour later, outside the Drizzle Pavilion, a red-clothed figure strode over. Her expression was as calm as water without any ripples. Greetings, Princess. Hong Yi bowed and greeted. Yaoji turned to look at the man in front of her and said calmly, I heard Hong Wan say that you remembered some things in the past. Is that true? Hong Yi shook her head and said, Princess is overthinking. Yaoji's eyes quietly observed her expression. After a long time, she warned, your wedding with Hong Wan is approaching. I don't care whether you remembered anything or not, your marriage with Hong Wan is already known to the world. At this time, I don't want to hear anything that I don't want to hear. Do you understand? Hong Yi nodded and softly responded. Go back. Yaoji waved her hand and said. I'll take my leave. Hong Yi bowed again and turned to leave. Bye Yujing. Seeing her turn to leave, Yaoji suddenly spoke. Hong Yi stopped and turned her head. She saw a gorgeous face appear in front of her. It was so familiar that her body unconsciously stiffened. In front of the lake, Yaoji's eyes were flowing with brilliance. The white veil on her face covered her appearance, and traces of a charming aura were emitted, bewitching people. A moment later, Hong Yi's expression returned to normal. The familiar face was once again hidden in her heart. Princess, is there anything else? Hong Yi asked indifferently. There's nothing else. You can leave. Yaoji calmly said. Hong Yi nodded and turned to leave. After the phoenix figure left, Princess Hong Wan appeared and stepped forward. He has indeed begun to remember something, but it's very little. Maybe it's just some fragments of memory. Yaoji slowly said. Hearing this, Princess Hong Wan heaved a sigh of relief. However, at this point, Yaoji's tone changed. She looked at the woman in front of her and said, there's already someone in his heart. Although it's hidden very deeply, it's unforgettable. I can feel that he still hasn't truly forgotten that person. In addition, he may have suspected that his memory loss is related to the king's domain. Just now, at the last moment, he was clearly very vigilant against me. What do you mean? Princess Hong Wan asked softly. Find a chance to use the mind-bewitching technique on him as soon as possible. Be careful. Now he's very vigilant. It's not easy to succeed, Yaoji said seriously. Princess Hong Wan nodded and silently agreed. Outside Hong Wan's star, in the endless starry sky, 3 figures walked over. The people from Mahist sect had arrived at Hong Wan. They were extremely fast and disappeared in the blink of an eye. After landing on the vast star, they directly walked toward the king's domain. Mahist sect's Gemini appeared in various large cities and walked toward the king's domain. The red invitation card flew out and disappeared into the fog. Before long, the fog dispersed and a great path appeared to welcome the guests. When the 3 of them entered the king's domain, the scenery around them immediately changed. It was a fairyland filled with singing birds and fragrant flowers. Spiritual chi was extremely abundant, making them feel as if their bodies had become lighter. So beautiful. Yin-Er looked left and right, her large eyes filled with admiration. In front of them, Qi Huan turned his head and looked at the little girl beside Ning Chen. He gently smiled. This child had always been taken care of by his junior brother. Her childlike innocence had never disappeared. It was a good thing. On the path of martial arts, it was very important to be able to keep one's original heart. Unfortunately, there were very few people who could truly do it. Not long after the three of them entered the king's domain, a beautiful maidservant came over and led the three of them to the west. After walking for the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the maid stopped in a tidy little courtyard. She whispered a few words, then respectfully bowed and walked away. "Miss, please wait." Ning Chen called out to her. The maid stopped and looked at the guest in front of her. Puzzled, she asked, "Young master, do you have any other instructions? I want to see the prince consort of your domain. Can I trouble you to inform him?" Ning Chen asked softly. The maid revealed a troubled expression. "Young master, I'm sorry. The prince consort's matters have always been handled by the princess herself. Servants like us can't get close." Ning Chen's eyes narrowed when he heard this. He nodded and said, "I was rash." The maidservant bowed again and retreated. Ninth junior brother, are you very familiar with the prince consort of the Red One King's domain? Qi Huan asked. Yes. Ning Chen said softly, it's a very familiar old friend. It's just that we haven't met in a long time. He might not recognize me now. I see. Qi Huan smiled and said, you'll definitely have a chance to meet in a few days. There's no need to rush now. Ning Chen nodded and said, senior brother, don't worry. I won't act rashly. On the side, Yin Er's mouth twitched when she heard Ning Chen's words. These words could only fool an honest person like Qi Huan. It's already late. You've traveled for so long. Junior brother, you should rest first. Tomorrow, we'll go visit the Red One King together. Qi Huan looked at the darkening sky and said softly. Yes. Ning Chen nodded and led the little girl to the other side of the courtyard. Ning Chen walked into the guest room and prepared the bed for the little girl. He then prepared to leave. Be careful when you go, Yin Er reminded him. Don't worry. Ning Chen softly replied and said, don't run around here. I'll be back soon. Under the night sky, the black-clothed man left the courtyard in a flash. Before anyone could see him clearly, he had already disappeared. Flowing Wind Hall, in front of the hall, Hong Yi stood under the moon and looked into the distance. For some reason, she felt uneasy. At this moment, red mist filled the air and a beautiful figure walked out of thin air. Her eyes were as bright as the stars, and her decadent aura submerged Hong Yi. In an instant, the black-clothed man appeared and a cold sword slashed towards the woman behind Hong Yi. Chapter 635. In front of the flowing wind palace, the red Luan bewitched the heart. In an instant, the wind rose, and the demonic body appeared at the same time. The sword light threatened to kill. The palm and the sword collided, and the aftermath spread out in all directions. The red fog was scattered by the sword wind, and the decadent aura dissipated between heaven and earth. The wind and clouds on the Taisher sword changed, and a murderous aura circulated. With a slash of the sword, a furious gust of wind howled, and the sword broke through the dust. Princess Hong Luan flipped her palm to block the sword. Clanging sounds rang out as their quick moves collided. In the blink of an eye, over 10 moves had already been exchanged. Wisps of red mist filled the air and interweaved into an inescapable net. However, the black-robed figure was like a startled swan. Before the first sword was finished, another sword was raised. The sword was as fast as lightning, cutting through all the bindings. In the center of the battlefield, Red Robe stood there quietly. There was no change in her eyes. A moment later, with a wave of her hand, Mo Kuang appeared. With a clanging sound, the two swords clashed. Sword chi spread out in all directions. Their eyes were equally cold and emotionless. The two of them exchanged blows again. After a single glance, there was no turning back. The sword's edge was reincarnated, and killing intent filled the sky. In the blink of an eye, the battle turned into a blazing white. Mo Kuang's and Taisher's swords clashed, and the two divine weapons crisscrossed. Phoenix primordial surged, and magnificent neon lights bloomed in the night sky. Queen Hong Wuan withdrew herself from the battle. She looked at the two of them as her eyes flickered. In the battle, these two were at the pinnacle of swordsmanship. They were the closest to being the only pair in the world. Their swords came from the same source, but their sword moves were completely different. Battle of the Phoenix Demon under the moon, battle rebirth battle, sword moving spring and autumn. Who are you? How dare you trespass into the king's domain? The phoenix body waved her sword and shook off the battle as she spoke. The one who taught you a lesson. The demonic body's eyes were as deep as the abyss. Extreme yang rose and a sword reflected the sun and moon. The martial arts of the Sun Sutra reappeared in the world. Seeing this, the phoenix body's expression turned serious. She put her left hand together and turned it into a sword. Suddenly, a scorching torrent spread out. The power of the heavenly Book of Yang soared into the sky. The Sun Sutra and the Book of Sun, two extreme yang martial arts, appeared at the same time. In an instant, the night was as bright as day, and boundless heat waves swept out in all directions. His sword intent condensed and he struck out with his sword. The two swords collided with a shocking explosion. Angry waves shook, affecting the entire king's domain's grand formation. Heaven and earth shook, and dust and sand tumbled like waves. Seeing that the battle had reached a stalemate, Princess Hong Wuan took a step forward and stretched out her delicate hand. Red mist filled the air as she tried to capture Hei Yi. Sky Breaker. The demon body swung his sword to block Mo Kuang's attack. Immediately, his left hand condensed Yuan Qi and slashed his sword across the air. The sword Qi swept over. Princess Hong Wuan raised her vital essence and forcefully dispersed the sword will. Her figure did not stop as she swept forward. The demon body's eyes turned cold. It clenched its left hand and a white beam of light appeared. A mournful sword cry echoed through the world as it wrapped around the demon body's arm. Two swords appeared at the same time, one hard and one soft. The demonic body was fighting one against two, displaying his shocking swordsmanship for the first time. Mo Gate's ninth son, Wang Jing, used force. Your crimes are unforgivable. Princess Hong Wuan flipped her palm to shake off the sword tip on her arm. She struck out with her palm, causing red mist to surge, breaking through the clouds. The demon body took a step forward, moving like the wind. His sword was brilliant, and he made a strong counterattack. Princess Hong Wuan changed the direction of her palm again. The red mist turned into a waterfall and locked onto the sword tip. The red mist twined, and the white rainbow soft sword's edge twisted, breaking free from its bindings. The soft sword cut through the red mist, pressing forward. White rainbow chill strike, Mo Kuang blocked the attack. In front of the princess, the phoenix body flashed past as the tip of his sword slashed down, unleashing 1,000 feet of phoenix flames. Unrepentant. The demon body snorted coldly. The white rainbow wrapped around Mo Kuang's sword, and Taisher slashed towards the phoenix body. Princess Hong Wuan stepped forward and received the sword tip with a flip of her palm. Red mist spread, and she made another counterattack. In an instant, the demon body moved, dodging the palm force with extreme speed. The sword tip turned back, and a dazzling killing light shot out, sealing the throat and seizing the soul. Princess Hong Wuan leaned to the side, avoiding the sword tip. The sword tip twisted again, following her like a shadow. The extremely fast sword had endless variations. One sword after another, forcing the demon body to kill. The sword tip collided, and the phoenix body retreated half a step. She stepped forward, and her figure was like an illusion. At the same extreme speed, she pressed forward. Clanging sounds of swords rang out, and sparks flew in all directions. In the blink of an eye, it was a confrontation of absolute speed. On the other side, Princess Hong Wuan's palm force grew stronger, supporting the phoenix body and sealing the black robe. There was blood, and the two swords were red. However, the demon body's expression did not change. The sword force changed again, and the white rainbow soft sword moved strangely, borrowing and diverting force. The exquisite defense blocked the stepping celestial. The wind and clouds in front of the flowing wind palace changed. The sound of swords was ear-piercing, and the sword light was dazzling. The demon body's combat power was shocking. In a shocking battle, the demon body on the sword went against the celestial. With two swords in hand, both hardness and softness were combined. The white rainbow on the left turned into heavenly might, and the Taisher on the right fought with extreme speed. One was strange and one was fast, showing the extreme power of martial arts. The rising sun shines in the east. Seeing that the situation was in a stalemate, the red-robed sword changed the wind and clouds, and a divine sun rose behind him. Wherever the divine sun's brilliance shone, the sword will surged endlessly. Today, you are a disgrace to the name of knowing destiny. The demon body's eyes were unusually cold. His left palm slashed across the sword tip, and blood dripped, dyeing Taisher's sword tip red. In an instant, the crimson sword light rose to the extreme, and unparalleled sword pressure swept across the entire Red Luan realm. At this moment, in the king's domain, cultivators from all over raised their heads and looked into the depths of the king's domain. They were shocked. This was Sword Qi. In a small courtyard in the west of the king's domain, Qi Huan, who was about to rest, felt the rapidly spreading Sword Qi in the distance. His expression changed, and he took a step forward, rushing in the direction of the Sword Qi. Nirvana. In front of the flowing wind palace, the sword of Nirvana reappeared. The magnificent sword light rose between heaven and earth, and the extreme sword pressure shook the sky. In an instant, the sword light fell, breaking through the sky, and an earth-shattering vibration drowned the void for hundreds of feet. Under the sword light, the phoenix body and Queen Hong Luan joined forces to block it. With a bang, they were forced back several steps, and their blood and qi surged violently. At the same time, in the king's domain, the matrices were automatically activated, and the matrices flickered, resisting the terrifying aftershocks. How dare you! In the depths of the king's domain, an angry roar came out. The void rolled, and thunder roared and lightning flashed. A large hand slapped down, capturing the black robe below. The demon body stepped forward, and his body moved quickly, avoiding the large hand. Then he slashed with his sword, and sword light soared in all directions. In the void, the large hand that gathered wind and clouds collapsed, scattering between heaven and earth. Ninth son of Mo Gate, you dare to cause trouble in my king's domain? I can't let you live. Before he finished speaking, purple light gathered, and a man in purple clothes walked out. His eyes were filled with disdain, and the aura of a king was undoubtedly revealed. Seeing the person who came, the demon body's expression froze. The Red Luan realm monarch was in trouble. With the appearance of a monarch, his aura was incomparably vigorous, and the pressure made the whole battlefield shake. He had the strength of a peak immortal corporeal realm, and he seemed even stronger than Master Mo. In the next moment, the Red Luan realm monarch moved, and an extremely powerful palm sealed the void, swallowing heaven and earth. With the arrival of danger, the demon body's eyes flashed with a bloody light. The true essence in his body surged, and the yellow spring seal was activated. At this moment, a green light flashed in the distance, and in the blink of an eye, it arrived at the battlefield. With a flip of its palm, it shook the monarch. With a muffled groan, Qi Huan retreated several steps. He was heavily injured in just one move. Seeing this, the demon body suppressed the demonic qi that was about to erupt. His figure flashed, and he took Qi Huan, retreating 10 feet away. How are you? Ning Chen asked. I'm fine. Qi Huan endured his injuries and replied. Then he looked at the person in front of him and said, Realm Monarch, my 9th junior brother didn't mean to offend your realm. There must be some misunderstanding between us. I hope you can be merciful. Whether it's a misunderstanding or not, we'll know once I capture this person. The Red Luan Realm monarch didn't hide the coldness in his eyes at all. He took a step forward and pressed forward once more. Ning Chen frowned slightly, and he took Qi Huan with him, turning around and dodging the attack. Oh! The Red Luan Realm monarch was about to attack again, but his expression suddenly changed. Ding! But at this moment, the sound of a string resounded between heaven and earth, stirring up the wind and directly separating the battlefield. Amidst the sound, a man in luxurious clothes walked out with a silver string in his hand. Blood dripped from the string, dyeing the ground below red. "Guest, long time no see," said Imo Shaoai as he glanced at the black-clothed youth not far away. Ning Chen's eyes narrowed. "Thank you for your help, House Master." "It's nothing," said Imo Shaoai calmly. The Red Luan Realm monarch's expression sank. "House Master Xiaoyu, this isn't a place you should be. Realm monarch, keeping people 1,000 miles away from you is beneath your dignity," said Imo Shaoai indifferently. "The Red Luan realm doesn't welcome scheming people." "House Master Xiaoyu, please leave," said the realm monarch coldly. "Ha!" Imo Shaoai lightly smiled. "In terms of scheming, I'm far from being your opponent." Also, Imo Shaoai's expression turned cold. "You don't have the right to stop me from going where I want to go." Arrogant. The realm monarch's expression sank. True essence surged in his hand, and a heavy pressure rapidly increased. "Do you want to fight? I'll accompany you anytime." Mo Shaoai indifferently looked at the surging true essence around the former's body. "Realm monarch, you're a guest. Hong Wan's wedding is imminent, so let's talk about our grudges later." Just as the battle was about to begin, an elegant voice rang out from afar, stopping the two from fighting. Recognizing where the voice came from, the realm monarch suppressed his anger. He coldly glanced at the three people in front of him, then took a step forward and returned to the palace. Mo Shaoai also restrained his aura and looked to the west with a smile. "Princess Consort Yaoji, we haven't seen each other for many years. Aren't you going to meet your old friends? It's not appropriate for a woman to meet guests." "House Master Xiaoyu, welcome to the Red Luan realm," said Yaoji from the west. "You're welcome." Mo Shaoai smiled. To be able to meet so many old friends today, this trip was worth it. "Princess Consort, please send my regards to the old ancestor." "Of course," said Yaoji. After greeting her, Mo Shaoai looked at the demon and said, "Friend, do you have time to talk?" "Anytime." Ning Chen calmly nodded. "Very good. Once I've settled Hong Wan, I'll treat you to a drink." After speaking, Mo Shaoai didn't stay any longer and turned to leave. After taking 3 steps, Mo Shaoai suddenly stopped and looked at the red-clothed man not far away. He said, "I haven't thought of how to make you pay for the wound on Hong Wan's face. Perhaps you can think of a price to satisfy me." After speaking, Mo Shaoai faintly smiled and walked away. After the realm monarch and house master Xiaoyu left, Ning Chen coldly glanced at the phoenix and didn't continue fighting. He quickly left with the heavily injured Qi Huan. "Do you know him?" asked Princess Consort Yaoji softly. The red-clothed man shook his head and didn't say a word. He turned around and walked toward the palace behind him. Chapter 636. In a quiet courtyard in the west of the king's domain, 2 people appeared. Ning Chen condensed phoenix essence in his palm and sent it into the person beside him to help him heal. Not long after, Qi Huan's injuries were suppressed. He opened his eyes and looked at his junior brother. "Ninth junior brother, you were too reckless today." "I had no choice." Ning Chen sighed. "I'll go back to my room to heal." "You should rest too. Remember, don't be so impulsive again." Qi Huan reminded him. "Okay." Ning Chen nodded. Qi Huan dragged his injured body back to his room. Ning Chen pondered for a moment before walking to the guest room on the other side. In the brightly lit room, sat on a stool and kicked her legs as she waited quietly. When she heard Ning Chen's footsteps, she immediately ran over to open the door. Did you fight? Looked at the person in front of her and asked. Yes. Ning Chen nodded and walked into the room. Why did you fight? Can't you be reasonable when you're talking to yourself? Closed the door and quickly followed behind. Princess Hong Wan seemed to want to do something to the phoenix body. The phoenix body didn't notice, so I had no choice but to attack. So we fought, Ning Chen said softly. Didn't you say that the phoenix body is intelligent? Why is it so stupid? Pouted and poured a cup of tea for him. I'm not sure. Maybe something happened that I couldn't resist. Ning Chen took the tea and said softly. Then what about his marriage with Princess Hong Wan? We can't beat those old monsters here. Moved a stool to the side and sat down. If we can't beat them, then we have to think of a way. Ning Chen took a sip of tea and replied. What way? Also poured herself a cup of tea and asked curiously. I haven't thought of one yet. Ning Chen said calmly. Pfft. Spat out a mouthful of tea and sprayed it all over his face. She immediately jumped up from the stool and used her sleeve to wipe it clean. It's okay, Ning Chen said softly. He pushed the little girl's hand away and didn't mind. Guiltily sat back down on the stool and said awkwardly, what if the phoenix body doesn't wake up? Should I stop it? You can't expose yourself. She didn't care whether Ning Chen was a demon or a human, but the others certainly didn't think the same. The sects of the Central State couldn't tolerate the existence of demons, and the people of the outer heavens were certainly the same. Yes. Ning Chen nodded and said, if the phoenix body is still stubborn on the day of the wedding, we can only forcefully stop it. Even if our identity is exposed, we can't sit back and do nothing. Is there really no other way? When she was in the Western Celestial World, she had seen how powerful the Realm King of the Red One Realm was. At that time, it was only a clone. Now that they were in the Red One Realm, once their identities were exposed, it would not be easy for them to escape unscathed. Moreover, Lord Mo would be arriving soon. At that time, it was hard to say if he would stand on their side. Ning Chen looked outside the window and pondered for a moment before saying, we can't be completely out of options. Let's take it one step at a time. The appearance of the Dawn Moon Tower Master today might be a turning point. That black-hearted boss? Asked in surprise. Okay. Ning Chen nodded. He's just a big profiteer. No matter how strong he is, how strong can he be? Curled her lips. You can't judge a book by its cover. Ning Chen looked at the little girl in front of him and softly said, the strength of the Dawn Moon Tower Master is at least on the same level as the Realm King of the Red One Realm and Lord Mo. It's just that she usually doesn't reveal her strength. That's strong? Asked in surprise. Ning Chen nodded and said, if I didn't guess wrongly, Hong Wan must have been a member of the Red One Realm in the past. Since the Dawn Moon Tower Master was able to save her here, her strength is definitely not below the Realm King of the Red One Realm. Guiltily drank a mouthful of tea and said, if I had known earlier, I would have treated him better at the Dawn Moon Tower and not called him a profiteer. Ha! Ning Chen put down the cup of tea and stood up to walk to the window, saying, children's words carry no harm. You are still a child, so the Dawn Moon Tower Master won't bicker with you. Moreover, you will be able to see him again very soon. See him? Why do I want to see him? Moved a high stool to the window and sat beside it as she asked. To talk about business, Ning Chen replied. What about Sister Hong Wan? Continued asking. She's here too. Ning Chen looked at the magnificent scenery of the king's domain outside the window and said, "The slash on Hung Wan's face by the phoenix body won't end well. The matters involved in the phoenix body's slash are definitely far from what we have seen. The Dawn Moon Tower Master definitely didn't appear in the Red Luan realm at this time to congratulate us. Will he help us?" Asked expectantly. Ning Chen shook his head and said, "He won't. The Dawn Moon Tower Master is a merchant, and merchants pursue profit. Unless we have something of value that can catch his eye, it won't be an easy task to get his help. Previously, when he helped Hung Wan, it was a fair transaction, and no one owes anyone a favor. Today, the Dawn Moon Tower Master helped us, which is already commendable. However, this favor will end here, and there won't be any more." A black-hearted merchant. Pouted. "He isn't black-hearted, but he knows better. The human heart is complicated, and judging by value may seem heartless, but sometimes, it's the most correct method." After speaking, Ning Chen's gaze shifted to the little girl beside him and said, "A favor is heavy. Unless it's someone you cherish, don't owe too many favors, and don't give too many favors. Don't think that you will be rewarded for helping others. There's a limit to everything, and too many favors will similarly distort a person's heart. The Dawn Moon Tower Master is the most intelligent person in the world and can see clearly." "I don't understand," said delicately. "If you don't understand, then remember it. You will naturally understand it in the future," Ning Chen said softly. "Oh." Replied and leaned against the window, looking at the scenery outside. She said, "Then do we have anything that can catch the eye of this black-hearted merchant?" "Yes." Ning Chen nodded and said, "The Dawn Moon Tower Master's words before leaving today are an invitation to negotiate. The Dawn Moon Tower Master's wine isn't something you can drink as you wish. What you will do next will depend on the outcome of this negotiation. Don't lose out," said. "Don't worry. Up until now, we haven't had any conflicts of interest with the Dawn Moon Tower Master. This negotiation is just for each side to take what they need. It will be much easier than the negotiation with the Heavenly Sanctum," Ning Chen replied. Nodded, not quite understanding. She thought for a moment and said, "If we can awaken the phoenix body this time, will we still go back?" Ning Chen fell silent. He didn't directly answer and softly said, "It's impossible for the identity of this half of my body to remain a secret forever. Do you know why no one can tolerate a devil? Devils are bad people, but you aren't," replied delicately. Ning Chen lightly shook his head and calmly said, "You're wrong. It's because a devil's heart is cold. In essence, Xian Luo, Xia Zi, and I are all the same. A devil is a devil. There has never been a distinction between good and bad." Ning Chen's dark eyes became even more profound as he continued, "A devil's nature is much simpler than a human's nature, but it's also much crueler. Just like when I massacred the Allied forces in the Central Province, I wasn't any different from how I am now. The reason why I've always wanted to summon the phoenix body back is because I want to quickly hand over external matters and focus on cultivating the divine abilities of the Celestial Devil clan so that I can deal with Xian Luo's pursuit. The other, more important reason is that my rationality is based on my past memories. However, I don't know how much longer I can endure it. Perhaps one day, I'll get tired of it and return to being like Xian Luo, treating human lives like dirt." Hearing Ning Chen's words, raised her head. Her eyes were filled with tears as she said in a wronged manner, "Do you not want me anymore?" Ning Chen looked at the little girl and said, "I promised that I would teach you martial arts. However, if you stay by my side, you won't know when you'll be in danger. Therefore, it would be more suitable for you to be given to the phoenix body. His brain is damaged now. How can he teach me martial arts?" Said as she wiped her tears. Ning Chen raised his hand to wipe away the tears at the corner of her eyes and said, "The choice is in your hands. Even if I give you to the phoenix body in the future, I'll have to wait until he recovers his memories. After all, we are one body. The only difference is that we walk different paths. Now that my original body is missing, following the phoenix body is the best choice. Devils have never been a race with patience. Even I don't know when I'll get tired of this fake side of me. If you don't want to endure it anymore, you can. I'm mentally prepared and won't be afraid. It's fine as long as you don't abandon me. That day at the Waning Moon restaurant, you promised that you wouldn't abandon me again, Yin said as she wiped her tears. Hearing this, Ning Chen frowned slightly, not knowing how to answer. At the same time, in the big city next to the Red Luan Kingdom, Mo Xiaoai walked in front of a restaurant that was not inferior to the Waning Moon Chang'an. In the hall, Hong Wan, who had been waiting for him, saw him return. She stood up and bowed respectfully, "House Master." Mo Xiaoai nodded and said, "Hong Wan, prepare a pot of heartless night dream tomorrow. There will be a distinguished guest coming." "House Master, you met an acquaintance on this trip?" Hong Wan asked in surprise. "Oh, don't ask what you shouldn't ask. Just prepare the good wine." Mo Xiaoai chuckled and walked up to the second floor. On the second floor, the layout was exactly the same as the Waning Moon Chang'an in Jinxi City. There were the same 10 guest rooms, and a sign hung in front of each room. Mo Xiaoai entered the bright room and waved his hand to close the door. In the room, exotic flowers and herbs were arranged. Each of them was a rare treasure in the world. The fragrance was faintly discernible and intoxicating. On the other side of the room, a wooden box that was more than 10 feet long was placed on a quaint table. The wooden box was very ordinary and there was nothing special about it. "Friend, long time no see." Mo Xiaoai looked at him and smiled. Buzz. In the wooden box, a light sound was heard, as if it was responding to the former. "Can't wait?" "Oh, don't be impatient. Now, I have something that interests me more." "Fighting and killing, how vulgar." Mo Xiaoai chuckled and said, "Have you seen a demon who has been trying to maintain his rationality? A demon who has lost his humanity and can still maintain his rationality by relying on his past memories. I really have a whole new level of respect for him. However, how long do you think he can endure this false mask?" You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.